Dragons circle an ominous, dark castle. A black-haired woman sits me front. A confident smile plays on her lips. She identifies the object as a holy artifact. She finds the artifact concept incredibly cringy. She looks pensively from her high throne.
She laments that her practice won't stick.
A guard rushes in, gasping as he reports that the enemies have reached the gate. Her monster subordinates argue over who gets to go out and fight. She points a commandingly gloved finger forward. Rising from her seat, she orders Zanbar and Talim to the first sector while sending Roxanne and Belzeb to the second. She points directly at her coming opponent. Curiosity and hope flicker in her house. A hooded intruder walks down the carpet. She wonders if he has finally arrived. A title reveals the hero's name as Keel. The blonde man reveals sharp yellow R's. He stands prepared for a final confrontation. A heavy silence hangs between the two. She panics internally after forgetting her villainous lines. Her hand grips the cold stone ground. Growing black wings, she declares she will handle him personally while conjuring purple magic. The blonde man vowing to rip her heart out. The hero faces the demon princess alone.
She lunges forward with a dark, magical strike. She closes her eyes with a serene expression. A woman relaxes in her digitized afterlife.
She ponders the danger of late entry fandoms. She laughs while scrolling through her phone. Chat logs discuss the popularity of a novel possession system among the dead. She expresses shock at the mention of possession. A sudden sharp knock sounding at her door interrupts her phone scrolling. She opens the door asking who it is. A man in a suit smiles brightly. Showing his ID, the Reaper explains the long reincarnation wait and recommends the popular new possession system. She is thrilled to live in a novel. She requests to possess a specific romance character. He clarifies that she can only possess characters from recent reads and cannot choose the specific role. Her phone begins to vibrate with energy. He explains the system provides all the information she will need inside the story. She stares at her glowing phone, stunned. The screen confirms her possession of a character. A bright white light begins her transition. She plans to enjoy a luxurious life. She hopes to date the handsome hero. She wakes up to a beautiful title. Her vision clears beneath a bed canopy. A bear-like maid peers over her, asking if the princess is awake. A terrifying scream, a loud "ah" sounding out, echoes from the castle. The bear maid asks why she is screaming as the black-haired woman shouts out in absolute shock. The black-haired woman is horrified to see a bear in an apron standing before her. She panics internally, wondering if she has been transported into a story about bear soup. She reaches out tentatively to touch a coarse patchwork blanket. Her hand grips the rough fabric as she asks what it is. Her face contorts in an expression of absolute wide-eyed shock. Screaming, "Ah, what's this?" in terror, she throws the blanket away from herself. The grand red-walled bedroom stands silent as the scene shifts. She turns her back to the room and looks into a large mirror. Seeing her human reflection, she breathes a sigh of relief and confirms that she is indeed still a human. She examines her face and wonders if the novel contained a character with black hair and red eyes. She clutches her forehead while trying to recall the details of the story. Her search for the name Bellatrix on her phone returns absolutely no results. She is stunned that an unnamed character could be living in such a luxurious place. She stares at her phone in disbelief as new information suddenly appears. The screen confirms her new identity as the Devil's Dar. She recalls the plot where the main character, Keel, must defeat the ultimate villain to become emperor. She remembers her character's single scene where she mocks the hero's holy artifact as pathetic. A loud "ah" of frustration escapes her as she realizes she only has 3 lines in the story. She slumps to the floor, lamenting that she didn't get a glamorous life as a noble lady. She quickly regains her composure and declares that even the daughter of the devil can live a good life. She enthusiastically decides to transform the demon world into something resembling a fairy world. She vows to live slowly and enjoy every second of this new life. An ominous message appears, revealing that she didn't know the truth at that time. The text confirms that the peaceful future she desires will not come. She stares at a plate of raw organs and wonders if she is actually expected to eat it. A mantis chef asks if the food is to her taste and offers to prepare entrails without blood next time. She facepalms in despair, realizing that her personal chef is a giant mantis. The bear maid tries to kill the chef while he argues that even rats can cook in the human world. The princess screams that it won't work as the bear maid excitedly offers to go find a rat chef. She openly questions how the bear's brain could even come up with such a ridiculous idea. Taking a deep breath, she tries to think positively about changing her subordinates one by one. She smiles to herself, thinking that the process is just like training an animal. She gives a clear order to the 2 monsters to go and find her a human cook. The bear maid salutes happily and declares that she will go kidnap a suitable human immediately. The ominous castle sits beneath 2 moons in a blood-red sky. The black-haired woman walks through the grand, dark stone halls of her new home. She looks away with a sigh, admitting that keeping calm is out of the question. She realizes that with the Demon King in hibernation, she is currently the most powerful person there. Sitting on her throne, she decides to make the castle colorful by decorating it with expensive furniture.
Her monster subordinates cheer loudly and vow to go out and steal everything they can find. She stops them with a smile, explaining that they do not need to steal anything.
She clarifies her plan by telling them to simply pay for the items with money.
The subordinates are struck by a sudden bolt of shock at the mention of paying.
They suggest stealing money or gouging out eyes instead, which she repeatedly and firmly forbids. She buries her face in her hands, completely overwhelmed by their demonic logic. She declares to herself that this possession has been an absolute failure. A look of deep concern crosses her face as she remembers her previous conversation.
She recalls a memory of the room where the Reaper explained the rules of the possession.
The man in the suit explains that she will stay in the story until she dies or requests a new novel.
Back in her original form, the woman stares at her glowing phone in complete silence.
The black-haired woman grips her thumb. Her hand crushes a skull as she acknowledges the overwhelming power of the original plot. Bellatrix resolves to become the greatest villain and accept her predestined death according to the story.
A heavy silence follows her resolution. In the year 1163, the hero Keel and the Lady Roseanne are destined to meet.
At age 15, the illegitimate Prince Keel entered the palace without any magical ability. By 18, Keel began searching for holy relics and eventually met Roseanne. The story dictates that Bellatrix will die at the hands of a hero.
She wonders if she can endure her isolated fate alone.
Her subordinates whisper amongst themselves, assuming their princess is in a terrible mood.
A dog-like monster offers her a gift, but she sharply refuses to accept anything from him. She tries to laugh off the long wait for her inevitable ending. Overwhelmed by her subordinates' grotesque suggestions of fingers and evisceration, Bellatrix despairs over their demonic logic. A sudden, chilling thought gives her pause. She recalls her setting as the daughter of a powerful devil. She considers skipping forward 4 years to fulfill her role as the ultimate villain immediately.
A sinister smile plays on her lips.
Massive black wings suddenly sprout from her back. Dark purple magic surges from her outstretched hand. With a mocking laugh, she bids her subordinates farewell while unleashing a powerful spell. A violent flash of purple light consumes the entire throne room. The confused monsters cry out in shock as their princess vanishes before their eyes.
They stare blankly at the empty throne where she sat.
The trio remains completely stunned and motionless. Bellatrix scratches her head, wondering why her plan failed to produce results. She realizes she hasn't used up all of her magical energy yet.
Noticing her subordinates look different, she wonders if excessive magic use caused their bodies to shrink.
She asks the silent room for the current year in the human world.
A subordinate raises his hand and identifies the current imperial year as 1153.
She stares in total disbelief at the unexpected number.
When she demands the date be repeated, the subordinate confirms the year is 1153.
Panicking, she grabs a nearby monster and aggressively demands the current date. The trembling cat-like beast confirms the year is indeed 1153.
A look of absolute horror crosses Bellatrix's face. A system notification reveals she didn't travel forward but jumped 10 years into the past. The scene shifts to a moonlit castle. Dark woods rustle under the night sky. Keel and his knights take shelter within a blue magical dome. The blonde hero looks exhausted but remains on guard.
A knight urges the young majesty to begin medical treatment for his wounds.
The man questions if the risk of collecting holy relics is truly worth it. Keel remains silent and lost in thought. He reflects on his status as a cursed prince who was born without magic.
A notification confirms his identity as an illegitimate son.
Despite his relentless efforts, his reputation as a failure has only grown over time.
His jaw tightens in grim silence. A sudden, blinding flash of light surprises the group. Keel shields his eyes as a wave of energy hits them. He peeks through his fingers, struggling to see what is happening.
Blinding light obscures everything in his vision.
The white-haired boy awakens in confusion.
He desperately searches for his sword. His fingers brush against cold iron.
He realizes he is helped active.
Young Keel stares ahead in shock. A decade has passed since the Demon King entered hibernation, leaving the young princess to grow under the watchful eyes of her monster subordinates. While the demons eagerly anticipate the princess's growth, Bellatrix sits on her throne, privately lamenting the failure of her new life. The princess slumps over in despair.
She questions her unfortunate possession, wondering why she had to inhabit a role that barely appears in the novel, and wishing she had been reborn as a human instead.
Her red eyes gleam with frustration. She reflects on the rules of the demon realm, knowing she can only escape to the human world once she inherits her father's power and becomes an adult. Escape requires a summoning or a contract with a human, but for now she is confined by her youthful form.
She determines that she can live wherever she pleases as long as it doesn't disrupt the main flow of the novel.
Recalling that her role doesn't begin until she is 24 and Keel is 22, she realizes she must remain hidden for 10 years before becoming an adult.
She resolves to simply endure this demonic life for the next 4 years until she comes of age.
The castle echoes with shouts that the princess has finally awakened from her deep contemplative silence.
A mischievous grin spreads across her face.
Surrounded by blooming flowers, Bellatrix brightly announces her intention to leave for the human realm immediately.
Her 4 monster subordinates stare in silence.
Standing before her throne, the monsters ask why she would want to visit the human realm, expressing shock that she would choose to visit the home of such an inferior race.
Bellatrix laughs to herself, mocking her subordinates' lack of foresight. She wins them over by claiming that studying humans better will allow her to become more effective at torturing them, prompting her subordinates to cheer in pride.
A large, horned beast approaches her.
The general warns her that demons lose their power in the human world and suggests she bring one of the generals along to assist her. A giant cockroach monster volunteers enthusiastically.
Bellatrix recoils in terror at the sight of the talking insect, while the cockroach asks if he is not good enough and wonders if his presence would be nice.
She rejects the insect, insisting on a companion with a human appearance, prompting the cockroach general to showcase his ability to transform into a human body.
Chibi Bellatrix maintains her intense featured.
A centipede monster transforms into a blue-haired man and offers to skin humans for her every day, but she flatly refuses his violent services.
A dog-like beast takes human form and claims to do things inappropriate for all ages, leaving the princess to question what he actually is.
She turns her attention to a leopard. The beast transforms into a handsome, tanned man, and Bellatrix chooses him for his relatively normal appearance compared to the others.
She looks startled as a subordinate's voice rings out across the throne room.
General Zanbar vows to kidnap young and fresh humans for the princess daily, and though she rejects the offer, she feels the situation is finally manageable. Ready for action, she declares her readiness to finally depart for the human realm.
Her gloved hand rests in stillness. Bellatrix sighs wearily on her bed. Lying back, she complains about how difficult it has been for a demon to find a way into the human realm. Standing within a magic circle, she reflects on the fact that only low-level monsters can move freely, while high-level demons like herself and Zanbar must wait to be summoned.
A week passes without any news of a summoning or humans, leaving the princess bored and discouraged.
The bear maid's frantic shouts suddenly interrupt her. The bear maid excitedly announces that a summoning circle has finally appeared within the castle. Bellatrix jumps up in pure delight. She sprints through the halls, ordering everyone to clear a path as a vibrant purple summoning circle begins to glow on the floor.
She stops before the radiant light.
The princess stands at the center of the active summoning circle, ready for her transition.
A confident smile returns to her lips. She gives the command to leave.
Bellatrix and General Zanbar walk into the blinding light as the summoning magic takes hold of them.
As she vanishes, she bids a happy farewell to the demons, promising to see them again in 10 years. A crescent moon hangs over a dark castle.
Frightened children huddle inside an iron cage.
A bearded captor unlocks the metal cage. The man identifies the boy as his next target.
Keel tightly grips his precious holy Melek. Keel laments his fate as an illegitimate prince.
A violent blast shocks the manic captor. Someone coughs as thick smoke fills the room. The captive boy watches the swirling mist.
Bellatrix emerges from the dissipating purple smoke.
Zanbar appears behind her in human form.
Bellatrix questions her sudden arrival in this location.
She surveys the grim surroundings in surprise.
The wizard gleefully claims he summoned a demon. Bellatrix stares coldly at the ecstatic man.
The captor offers the caged children as sacrifices.
Bellatrix commands Zanbar to kill the crewman.
She frees the children and tells them to flee.
Zanbar questions her decision to release their potential prey.
The beastman laments wasting such a good meal. She scolds the demon for lacking a conscience.
Bellatrix rages while Keel watches from his cates. Keel realizes this encounter differs from his past.
He recalls the trauma of being nearly killed.
The holy relic glows with a divine light.
Keel wonders if he was destined to die.
He stands alone amidst memories of his suffering.
The boy is snapped back to the present. Bellatrix tells the boy he is free now.
Keel admits he has nowhere to return to.
He looks at the demon princess in silence.
Bellatrix extends a gloved hand toward the boy. Keel stares up at the mysterious black-haired woman.
She offers him a warm, unexpected smile. Bellatrix beams as white flowers surround her.
The princess gently takes the boy's hand.
She leads Keel away from the dark castle.
Bellatrix is impressed by the boy's inner strength.
She notes his remarkable composure in this situation.
Bellatrix calls out to get the boy's attention.
She looks at him with a playful expression.
Keel gives a small, quiet nod of agreement.
Bellatrix decides to Gekamef her.
Keel follows her with a look of determination.
Zanbar suggests eating, but she dismisses him.
Keel resolves to embrace this strange new life. His golden eyes glow with renewed purpose.
Bellatrix brightly announces they have reached the time.
Keel decides to be cautious in this new world.
A tavern sign sways under the moonlit sky.
Thump, a platter of hearty food appears. Bellatrix marvels at the food like she's in a comic, while Zanbar questions the human obsession with eating, only to be told to be quiet and not ruin the mood.
Her mouth opens for a bite.
Nom, she takes a big, flavorful bite.
Moved to tears, she proclaims that the food is absolutely delicious. Zanbar questions the nature of the meal and wonders if he should dip his portion into the soup.
The brown-haired man takes a large bite. Wow, shocked by the incredible flavor, Zambar finds himself at a loss for words. Back in his beastly form, Zambar enthusiastically devours his meal while Bellatrix observes that he seems to be enjoying himself. She notices the boy isn't eating.
Bellatrix wonders if Keel has never eaten meat before as the blonde boy stares hesitantly at his plate.
She encourages Keel to eat since even Zambar is participating, but the boy remains silent.
Keel worries that he doesn't know how an 8-year-old is supposed to eat and hopes to learn how to use a fork later. Bellatrix continues to watch him in silence. Bellatrix asks if he doesn't know how to use a fork, and a flustered Keel wonders if other children his age already know how. Her gloved hand gently reaches for his.
Bellatrix takes Keel's hand to guide him through the motion of eating. She encourages him to dig in now that he knows it's easy, as Keel remains hesitant.
Keel finally takes a small bite. Bellatrix praises Keel as her servant while patting his head, which clearly surprises the blonde boy.
She continues to pet his self-terror.
Bellatrix offers a warm and gentle smile.
Watching them, Zambar questions the utility of a servant who lacks basic skills like using a fork. The brown-haired man insists that one servant is enough, clearly referring to himself. Bellatrix counters that Keel likely never learned because he was an orphan and resolves to let him learn as they go. When Zambar argues that demons are born with all their knowledge, Bellatrix snaps at him to stop talking back. The scene shifts to a quiet Becker.
Stuffed and relaxed, Bellatrix reflects on how staying in the demon world any longer would have driven her insane. She decides that despite it not being the noble life she once imagined, she can manage this one. Recalling her subordinates, she considers that she might have to stay in the human realm for 4 years until she reaches adulthood.
A knock at the door announces Zambar's arrival, and Bellatrix gives him permission to enter.
Zambar enters the room leading a clean and well-dressed Keel.
The blonde boy looks polished and tidy. Bellatrix thinks that Keel looks rather cute now that he has been properly cleaned up.
A sudden realization startles the black-haired princess. Bellatrix questions if Zambar actually used soap, complaining that the boy still smells terrible despite his clean appearance.
Zambar boldly claims he only uses blood to wash and asks what soap even is.
Horrified, Bellatrix realizes that Zambar has been giving the child blood baths this entire time.
Zambar looks on with an indifferent expression. She tells the demon that if he won't listen, he should simply return to where he came from.
Bellatrix insists that since they are here, they must live according to human standards.
When Zambar tries to protest, the princess firmly orders him to leave if he won't comply.
Zambar reluctantly agrees to take a soap bath and leaves the room.
Bellatrix and Keel march into Prague.
Bellatrix reassures the stiff boy that she isn't angry with him and tells him he doesn't need to be so tense. She asks for Keel's age and guesses that he might be 5 years old, prompting him to shake his head.
Bellatrix eventually correctly guesses that Keel is 8 years old after he indicates his age with his fingers.
She privately notes that he seems far too small for an 8-year-old child. She worries that his lack of proper nutrition has affected his ability to speak clearly.
Bellatrix asks if he has a name.
Keel remains silent and contemplative.
Bellatrix looks at the boy with curiosity.
A look of suspicion crosses her features. Bellatrix examines the young boy's hands scaftily.
Bellatrix questions the boy's true identity.
Bellatrix is shocked to realize Keel is Oli. Bellatrix turns toward him with a sharp resentment.
She notes Keel's platinum hair and amber eyes.
Bellatrix resolves to confirm her growing suspicions. She searches for a definitive way to test him. Bellatrix beckons for Keel to coach her.
Bellatrix asks if he has ever met a wizard.
Keel is confused by her sudden, odd question.
Keel stares curiously at her glowing smartphone. Keel worries lying might make her hate him, while Bellatrix decides to pivot her line of questioning.
Bellatrix asks if his mother left him an heirloom.
Keel clutches a glowing divine pendant.
Keel is stunned by her knowledge as Bellatrix notices his flustered reaction. Bellatrix confirms that the child is indeed the protagonist, Keel.
The moon shines through a quiet window.
Bellatrix gently pets the gore's head. Keel falls into a deep, peaceful sleep on her lap.
Bellatrix sighs, realizing she has adopted the story's main protagonist.
Bellatrix reflects on the pendant's immense divine power. Bellatrix remains silent as a sense of dread grows. Bellatrix panics, realizing she lacks any divine powers herself. Her phone reveals that Keel eventually becomes the crown prince. The text mentions his encounter with an angel and mysterious help.
Bellatrix realizes they killed the wizard central to Kim's seat.
Bellatrix considers if she should abandon him like a true villainess.
A sudden, sharp realization hits the princess.
Bellatrix discovers a customer service option on her device.
The screen warns that the inquiry will shut down her phone. Bellatrix checks the list of frequently asked questions.
The FAQ explains that minor setting changes are acceptable.
Bellatrix worries about the consequences of altering the male lead setting. Bellatrix finds a question about unrestorable setting changes. The inquiry focuses on what to do when settings are messed up. Bellatrix waits for the system's response in silence.
A shocking revelation leaves the princess completely speechless.
Bellatrix begins to understand the system's true nature. The possession system itself was what turned back time. Bellatrix sits alone with the sleeping boy.
Bellatrix regrets not reading the possession instructions more carefully.
Bellatrix looks determined as she plans her next move. Morning light begins to filter through the trees. Keel's eyes flutter open as the new day begins. Keel stares up at the princess in confusion. Bellatrix greets him with a warm, gentle wow. The two share a quiet, calm moment together. The scene reveals a romance fantasy.
Bellatrix wears a mischievous, knowing smile.
A voice calls out to Keel. Bellatrix introduces herself to Keel as the princess of the animal kingdom. She introduces the tall man as Zanbar the leopard, reminding Keel of his appearance from the previous day. She firmly reaffirms Zanbar's identity as a leopard to the boar. Bellatrix uses her magic to demonstrate her own animal nature. A small black cat with glowing red eyes appears. Keel stares in confusion at the black cat. Zanbar scoffs that cats are beneath him, while Bellatrix proudly claims their origin from the animal kingdom.
Bellatrix informs the boy that she is taking back her promise to make him a servant.
Keel looks down with a somber expression. Bellatrix is startled by Keel's sudden mature. Bellatrix asks the tearful boy why he is crying. Resigning himself to fate, the boy tearfully tells her that it is fine for her to eat him. Keel weeps as he waits for his end. Bellatrix looks at the child with deep concern. A sudden realization strikes the princess. Startled, Bellatrix asks if the boy has known how to speak all this time. Her hand reaches out toward the child.
Bellatrix and Keel share a silent moment. Zanbar interrupts the mood to ask if he can finally be.
Keel's hands desperately clutch Bellatrix's das. He holds on with a look of desperation. Keel looks up at her through his tears. The blue jewel sparkles on the scholar.
Bellatrix reflects on her initial view of the story stunning.
She realizes that this reality is everything to the child. A pale hand reaches toward the boy.
Bellatrix gently wipes the tears from Keel's face.
She gives the boy a warm, reassuring smile. Keel vows to serve the princess well from now on.
Bellatrix tells him he doesn't need to be her servant because he is destined to become the crown prince.
She offers to help him become a prince herself. Keel firmly states that he does not want to be a prince. A small smile finally touches the boy's lips. Bellatrix thinks about how surprisingly eloquent the boy is. She asks why he stayed silent for so long if he could speak so well. Keel promises to do nearly anything she wants if she stops her previous plans. Bellatrix wonders how badly the child was treated in his past. She reaches out toward the blonde boy. Bellatrix pulls the crying Keel into a tight hug. She reflects on the nature of this romance novel world. Bellatrix resolves to stay in the human world for at least 10 more years. The princess looks forward with new determination. Bam! A hand slams firmly onto the wing table.
Bellatrix brightly announces her plan to buy a house with the gold she brought from the demon world.
The bartender notes the lack of real estate agencies, but mentions a property entrusted to him by the late Viscount. The red-haired man at the table asks if the little girl is truly serious about living there. Bellatrix listens as Zanbar continues to express his doubts. Bellatrix tells the red-haired man to be quiet and asks the bartender to lead her to the property. The bartender reveals a map explaining that the mansion belonged to a late Viscount.
Bellatrix reviews the specifications of the two-story mansion, which includes 8 rooms and a garden.
The bartender asks for 30 pieces of gold, leaving Zanbar completely stunned by the low price. Zanbar questions why the price is so low, while Bellatrix realizes that her companion's sense of value is skewed. Bellatrix looks at the map and decides that getting an affordable house quickly is more important than finding a perfect one. Bellatrix recalls the dangerous plotlines from the original story and decides the garden is perfect for training the boy.
Bellatrix cheerfully announces they should visit the house immediately, despite the other two men's obvious apprehension.
The sun shines brightly over the roofs of the quiet human town. They arrive at the gate of a dilapidated and overgrown estate that looks entirely abandoned. Bellatrix asks about the length of the vacancy while the bartender sweats and gives an evasive answer. The bartender opens the tall white front doors and invites the group inside. Inside, cobwebs hang from the ceiling of a dusty grand hall featuring a broken indoor fountain. Bellatrix is impressed by the size and thinks it's much better than her life in the demon realm. Bellatrix wants to stay but finds herself dwelling on the red-haired man's warnings about the house's potential problems. Bellatrix asks if there's anything wrong with the house, and the bartender nervously claims there isn't. Bellatrix observes Keel as he looks around the large, empty room. Bellatrix asks the blonde boy if he finds the house scary, and he silently shakes his head.
Bellatrix happily declares they will purchase the house, much to the bartender's intense relief and joy.
The bartender begins to speak but stops himself with a look of extreme hesitation. Bellatrix presents a large, heavy bag of gold pieces, and the bartender promises to prepare everything immediately. Bellatrix stands in the hall, satisfied that they finally have a permanent place to live. Bellatrix turns her attention toward Keel, who watches her with a surprised expression.
Bellatrix offers the young boy a soft and knowing smile.
Keel stares back at her, his amber eyes wide with a mix of wonder and confusion. The group visits various shops filled with high-end clothing and elegant jewelry. Bellatrix dresses Keel in several elaborate outfits, thinking he looks like a handsome young aristocrat. Bellatrix admires the boy's transformation, satisfied with how well he fits his role as a protagonist. A pale hand reaches out toward the boy's shoulder. Bellatrix guides Keel through the mansion as he clutches a bundle of his new clothes. A simple wooden partition stands in the center of the quiet room. Keel stands alone in his new finery, looking small and contemplative.
Keel looks down with a somber and thoughtful expression on his face.
A vision of a much older and more powerful version of the blonde boy looms behind him. Keel wonders why the princess would take him along if she didn't truly need a servant.
Keel reflects on the expensive gifts she has given him and concludes they will be together for a long time.
Tears begin to well up in the young boy's large amber eyes. The silence is broken by a sudden, loud bang as a curtain is pulled back.
A close-up shot focuses on the boy's soft blonde hair.
With a quick swoosh, Keel quickly hides behind a piece of furniture in a moment of panic. Keel clutches his head in embarrassment, wondering why he spoke out loud.
Keel looks toward the side with a lingering sense mori.
A look of sudden realization and surprise crosses the blonde boy's face. Bellatrix's voice echoes through the grand hall as she calls for her subordinate.
Zanbar, now appearing as a tall man with brown hair and a dark blue cape, answers her call.
Bellatrix instructs Zanbar to call her my lady, but he stubbornly questions the change in title.
Bellatrix's eyes glow with a fierce red light as she glares at the man.
Bellatrix warns him not to defy her again, and Zanbar immediately complies while Keel notes who really holds power.
Bellatrix calls for Keel as they stand before their grand, newly restored mansion.
Bellatrix brightly welcomes Keel to his new living quarters.
The two stand in the hallway. Bellatrix promises to get him furniture soon, while the blonde boy marvels at having his own room.
She excitedly pushes the child forward.
Bellatrix tells the boy to rest.
A sudden click sounds as the door closes. Bellatrix finds his nervous demeanor adorable.
Bellatrix worries the mansion is too big for Zanbar to maintain alone and imagines him ruining the laundry.
Bellatrix thinks the damp atmosphere is perfect for casting magic spells.
Bellatrix suggests summoning wandering demons for help, though Zanbar wonders why she'd pick lousy ones.
Zanbar suggests summoning demon generals, but Bellatrix refuses because she hates pests and tells him to stay with her.
Focus on Bellatrix's decorative hachio.
With a sudden whoosh, the air erupts in light as she activates a magic circle.
Bellatrix is relieved she doesn't have to recite embarrassing verbal incantations.
The princess reaches into the glowing energy.
Her power takes hold with a sharp snap. A red-haired man appears from the magic.
Bellatrix wonders what kind of demon she is signed.
She notices the man's red hair. Surprise flickers in the girl's eyes.
Bellatrix realizes she recognizes the man.
She identifies him as the eccentric man from the inn.
The man recognizes her and asks if she is an imperial sorceress.
The red-haired man looks down as Bellatrix questions how he was summoned.
Bellatrix stares up at the down air. Zanbar grits his teeth in frustration. Zanbar recognizes the man as Jenkins. Zanbar demands to know why the princess would summon him of all demons.
Jenkins is surprised she is a princess, while Bellatrix claims she doesn't know him.
Bellatrix insists she doesn't know him, but Zanbar explains Jenkins was banished long ago.
Zanbar reveals the man as a half-demon.
Narrative text explains that half-demons are a despised breed born from demons and humans.
Zanbar notes that Jenkins wouldn't like a demon living among humans.
Bellatrix realizes the house needs demons accustomed to the human world.
Bellatrix asks Jenkins if he would like to work her. She finds him reliable because of how he intervened at the inn.
Zanbar declares the hiring unacceptable and demands he be sent back.
Bellatrix hides behind Zanbar's scarf babe. Determination fills the young girl's gaze. Zanbar looms menacingly over the newcomer. Bellatrix finds the intense confrontation quite frightening.
Jenkins vows to do anything she requires.
He places a hand over heart.
Zanbar questions her for bringing weak companions to their home.
Zanbar suggests finding a stronger demonic heir to ensure their power.
Bellatrix focuses her magical energy again.
Bellatrix is willing to accept the risks of her current life.
Bellatrix worries about the struggles Keel will face.
She feels guilty for destroying his only protective artifact.
Bellatrix thinks her actions might seem pro-human.
Zanbar wonders why the princess would raise a human child she met purely by chance.
A low growl rumbles from Zanbar as he determines there is only one way to make others understand.
Bellatrix faces her two companions and prepares to reveal her grand plan.
Bellatrix declares her intention to use the child to bring the human world under her control.
A nervous thumping fills the air as Bellatrix wonders if they will take the bait. Jenkins looks skeptical of the princess's bold proclamation.
Zanbar is overcome with comical emotion following her statement. The scene shifts with a final promise that everything is about to happen. Bellatrix smiles triumphantly while Zanbar drops to his knees in a show of loyalty.
Zanbar vows to follow her every wish as her lady. Sunlight glints off the polished silverware on the dining table. Jenkins serves a meal with expert efficiency, drawing on his 2 centuries of experience living among humans.
Bellatrix calls out to Zanbar as a heavy thud sounds from a pitcher being set them.
Bellatrix proudly tells Zanbar to look at how perfectly the household tasks have been completed.
Zanbar sits back with his arms crossed, looking decidedly unimpressed.
Jenkins watches the princess with a calm and steady gaze. A voice asks if the young master has finally woken up.
Keel stands in his new attire, looking uncertain and slightly overwhelmed.
The group gathers around the dinner table as Bellatrix greets the Yarnguar. Bellatrix encourages Keel to eat and regain his strength, while Zanbar grumbles about humans and half-demons.
Keel looks down with a bead of sweat on his face.
Bellatrix is impressed by Keel's fork skills, unaware he views himself as her pawn.
A hand holds a knife as Bellatrix explains that larger pieces of food must be cut.
Bellatrix tells Keel it's great to have a tutor and considers leaving his education to the newcomer.
Bellatrix smiles while an annoyed sounds as she notes they both need to learn from the beginning.
The narrator reflects on finding a home and securing a competent, if unreliable, servant.
Bellatrix realizes she must earn money to maintain their life in the human realm.
A hand clutches the dark rectangular shape of a modern smartphone.
Bellatrix resolves to ensure the novel's story finishes exactly as it was originally written. Bellatrix sits at her desk with a quill in one hand and her phone in the other.
A close-up highlights the intense wonder in the young boy's amber eyes.
Bellatrix finds herself unable to focus on her writing because Keel is staring at her so intensely. Bellatrix offers a bright smile and asks Keel if he would like to read a book. Keel walks off toward the bookshelves while Bellatrix continues her work at the grand desk. A hand reaches for a volume as narrative text explains that these books are merely works of fiction. Keel stands alone, clutching a large, heavy book in both hands.
The boy's eyes are wide as he focuses on the object in front of him. Keel sits quietly at a desk looking down at the open book.
Keel mentally notes the hierarchy of the house, placing the princess at the top.
A look of deep concentration settles on the young boy's face.
Keel wonders about the mysterious object the princess is always carrying. Keel watches Bellatrix from afar and notes that the object looks like a simple black box. Keel wonders what she could be looking at that requires such fierce note-taking. Bellatrix remains completely absorbed in her phone and her lacquer.
A small sound of surprise escapes the princess as she notices her surroundings.
Bellatrix looks up from her work with a satisfied and gentle expression.
Keel stares back at her with a blank, wide-eyed expression. Bellatrix asks if he can't read, and a startled gasp of surprise follows her question.
Bellatrix giggles because Keel is holding the book upside down, thinking he looks adorable when he's flustered. Bellatrix kindly tells him it's okay and invites him closer so she can teach him how to read.
Bellatrix sits closely with Keel as she begins teaching him how to read. Bellatrix carefully prepares to draw a line with her quill.
With a cheerful ta-da, Bellatrix presents a drawing of a very fluffy and round creature.
Keel skeptically asks if she just drew a sheep, but Bellatrix firmly insists her drawing is a lion. Bellatrix proudly displays her drawing of the fluffy lion to the blay. Keel stares blankly at two nearly identical drawings and notes that he simply cannot tell the difference. Bellatrix suggests that pictures will help his memory and moves on to the next work. Bellatrix begins drawing a mouse for Keel while he watches with a look of worry. The black-haired girl offers a gentle smile as she focuses on her work. Keel looks at her with a soft and admiring expression.
The grand mansion stands silent and majestic under the full moon.
Bellatrix slumps back in her grand chair, looking completely drained of energy.
Bellatrix cries out in frustration that a week has passed and she has barely finished a fraction of her novel.
Bellatrix is suddenly startled by someone's presence behind her.
Narrative text explains that Keel always comes to find Bellatrix whenever she is busy organizing her novel.
Keel bombards Bellatrix with complex questions about mathematics and herbal alchemy, leaving her looking flustered and overwhelmed. Bellatrix stands up from her desk with a heavy sigh, announcing that she needs fresh air.
Bellatrix reflects on how she cannot trust the protagonist's safety to anyone, though she notes Jenkins is a capable half-demon.
Bellatrix looks toward the garden with a sudden sense of suspicion.
Bellatrix watches Jenkins from afar and worries that he might not be trustworthy after all.
Bellatrix observes from the balcony as the red-haired man moves through the garden in a secretive manner.
Bellatrix wonders where he could be sneaking off to in the middle of the night.
The moonlight illuminates the quiet entrance of the estate.
Bellatrix follows the man, keeping herself hidden in the shadows.
Bellatrix is surprised when she hears Xanbar's voice nearby. Bellatrix watches from around a corner and wonders what the two men are doing meeting secretly at night.
Xanbar tells Jenkins to stay out of his sight, while Bellatrix wonders why Jenkins was so eager to work for her.
Jenkins smiles confidently and vows to stick around, while Bellatrix wonders if his true goal is just to bother Xanbar. Bellatrix decides that regardless of his reasons, having a long-term companion means she can leave Keel in his care. Bellatrix steps out from her hiding spot and asks what the two of them are doing in the garden.
Bellatrix gives a knowing and mischievous smirk as she approaches them.
Both Xanbar, now showing small black ears, and Jenkins react with total shock and ask what nonsense she is thinking.
Bellatrix tells them to calm down and reveals she was only messing with them.
Bellatrix playfully waves her hands around as she enjoys their reaction.
Jenkins asks if she is entrusting the boy to him, and she notes that he has lived in the human world the longest.
Bellatrix points at her dark-haired subordinate and bluntly declares that the newcomer is smarter than him. Xanbar hangs his head in defeat while Jenkins chuckles at the insult. Bellatrix cheers with joy because she has finally finished organizing all her important notes. Bellatrix feels confident that everything will go smoothly from this point forward. Bellatrix uses her magic to create a perfect duplicate of her important book.
Bellatrix steps out of her room with a bright smile, happy to finally take a break from her studies.
Bellatrix suddenly pauses with a look of confusion on her face. Bellatrix wonders if she has been studying for so long that she is starting to see things.
Bellatrix asks about the new table while Jenkins explains that it arrived based on the order she placed yesterday.
Jenkins mentions that they needed more supplies because there have been many broken plates recently.
Bellatrix realizes Xambar is to blame and calls him helpless, thinking she needs to find him a different job.
A sudden, loud crash echoes through the hall as Jenkins notes that another plate has been broken.
Bellatrix's face twists with intense, seething anger. Bellatrix in her floral blue dress screams at her subordinate, asking if he plans to break every object in the house. Xambar and Keel crouch on the floor looking flustered while surrounded by a pile of shattered ceramic pieces.
Xambar and Keel look up as someone approaches them in the hallway.
Xambar points an accusing finger while attempting to shift the blame for the mess onto the boy. A close-up captures the intense distress and uncertainty in the young boy's golden eyes.
Bellatrix confronts Xambar, accusing him of trying to make Keel take the fall for his own clumsiness.
The blonde boy suddenly bows and apologizes, causing the black-haired girl to gasp in surprise.
Bellatrix is visibly flustered by the boy's unexpected apology, while Jenkins watches from the background.
Xambar defends his logic, noting that the boy is always present whenever an object is broken.
The girl reaches out and gently takes the boy's small hands into her own. Narrative text reassures that broken plates are trivial and can always be replaced with more.
Bellatrix offers a warm smile and jokes about whether the child can regenerate like her subordinate.
Keel looks down at their joined hands, wondering why she is always so kind to him. With an angelic aura framing her, Bellatrix asks if he is hurt and offers to take a look. Internal thoughts reflect on how easily she accepts him without him needing to try. A floating question wonders why she looks at him with such a gentle expression.
The two stand together in the grand hall, their hands still clasped in a moment of quiet connection.
Bellatrix looks down at the boy with a tender and focused gaze. The young boy gazes back at her with an expression of deep, quiet admiration. Bellatrix rests a finger against her chin as she ponders the strange occurrences in the house. Bellatrix stands alone in the vast foyer, noting that the furniture seems to be moving on its own. Bellatrix worries about Keel's well-being, noticing that he has been looking increasingly exhausted lately.
Bellatrix questions Jenkins as he carries a vase of flowers, asking if he is overworking the child.
Bellatrix suspiciously asks if he is secretly poisoning the boy's food, drawing a serious look from Jenkins.
Xambar mocks Jenkins' status as a half-demon, questioning his ability to even poison someone properly.
The two men bicker while Bellatrix watches from behind with a weary and annoyed sigh. Talk about having your hands full with 2-century-old toddlers.
A sharp crash echoes as a blue and white patterned plate shatters into pieces. The three companions turn in unison, looking completely stunned by the sudden noise. Shards of broken porcelain lie scattered on the wooden floor around a pair of small brown shoes.
Keel stands near the debris looking terrified, insisting that he was only standing there.
Xambar claps his hands mockingly, noting how strange it is that the boy is always present during breakages. Jenkins looks thoughtful and agrees that something is definitely wrong with the timing of these accidents. Bellatrix points out that the plates were far away and only broke the moment the door was opened. Bellatrix argues that the plates shattered in a location that the boy could not have possibly seen or reached. The boy looks down in silence, his expression hidden as he processes her defense. Bellatrix pulls Keel into a sudden protective hug that leaves the boy wide-eyed with shock. Keel buries his face in her shoulder, overwhelmed by the physical show of affection. Bellatrix stares forward with a fierce and unwavering look of determination. The black-haired girl holds the boy securely, her hands resting firmly on his back. Keel looks up with watery eyes, visibly touched by her continued support. Bellatrix remains focused, her expression serious as she cradles the boy.
Bellatrix screams at her subordinates, accusing them of making the child curl up with stress.
Floating heads of Xambar and Jenkins react with total shock, insisting they never mistreated the boy.
Bellatrix gently holds the boy's face and reassures him that everything will be fine.
A close-up highlights the intense, glowing purple eyes of the protective princess. Narrative text reflects on a desire to change the misguided path of the last 10 years. Keel clutches his head in distress, hoping that he will finally get what he deserves. Bellatrix continues to yell while Xambar bluntly notes that she is the one making the boy look small. The princess looks on with a look of intense concentration and hidden worry.
Bellatrix suggests that perhaps the plates have legs and are moving themselves around the mansion.
The grand estate stands silent and majestic under a bright full moon and a starry night sky.
Bellatrix sits regally in her chair, dressed in a white gown and lost in deep thought.
Tears stream down the blonde boy's face as he asks if she truly believes in him.
Bellatrix reflects on how difficult it was for the protagonist to trust others in the original novel.
Narrative text wonders how to heal a child carrying such deep emotional wounds.
A series of soft, rhythmic taps sound against the grand bedroom doors. Keel stands at the entrance, clutching a pillow, looking small and uncertain in the doorway.
The black-haired girl beams with joy, her heart racing with excitement at his unexpected visit. The two children lie peacefully together under the gentle blue glow of the moonlight. Bellatrix watches the sleeping boy and wonders if he has finally started to trust her. The girl admires his long, beautiful eyelashes as he sleeps soundly beside her. Bellatrix's eyes glow with a soft, protective intensity as she watches over him.
A wave of exhaustion washes over her as her eyes slowly flutter shut in the darkness.
Bellatrix wakes to a sudden chill and reaches out, only to find a dark, clawed hand over the boy.
A massive explosion of shadow shatters the balcony, lighting up the midnight sky with a booming crash.
Bellatrix watches from the ledge as a dark entity falls toward the garden below with a heavy thud. Standing tall in her nightgown, the girl coldly demands to know why the intruder has entered her home. The dark spirit with glowing red eyes screams that she has always belonged in this place.
Bellatrix looks down at the writhing ghost with a look of absolute boredom and disdain. The girl mocks the spirit for thinking it can haunt a house where a true devil lives.
The shadow woman roars in fury, claiming the estate as her own and lashing out.
Bellatrix remains unmoved by the ghostly outburst, her expression turning sharp and dangerous. The girl reaches out and firmly seizes the spirit by its long, dark tresses.
Bellatrix bluntly informs the ghost that it must pay a heavy price for its late rent.
The black-haired girl maintains a crushing grip on the spirit's shadowy hair as it struggles.
Keel rushes through the dark hallways, terrified of what might be happening to his master.
The boy pauses as he senses a suffocating aura of loneliness filling the air around him.
Sinister red eyes watch from the gloom as a voice mocks his existence as a discarded life.
A massive clawed hand descends toward the boy, taunting him for being unwelcome in this world.
The voice tells him he only survived by killing others and will eventually be thrown away.
Keel reaches the balcony just as a massive shadow entity begins to manifest in the courtyard.
The boy stares in horror at the dark power unfolding before his eyes. A gargantuan ball of tangled shadow and hair looms over the garden, pulsing with energy.
The massive darkness pulses and writhes, filling the night with a sense of impending dread.
Jenkins and Zambar arrive on the balcony, calling out to the young master in alarm. Keel turns back with a look of pure desperation, his eyes searching for help.
The blonde boy watches the shadow mass as a faint, desperate cry for the girl echoes through the air. A chilling thought floats through the boy's mind, wondering what will happen if she dies.
Jenkins observes that death seems to follow the future Demon King into every corner of the house.
The red-haired man notes that the estate was likely cursed from the very beginning.
Keel is struck with terror as he processes the grim words of his older companions.
A dark voice asks the boy if he truly cares nothing for the princess's fate.
The subordinates react in shock as Keel suddenly lunges toward the source of the danger.
The boy screams for the girl as he sprints toward the heart of the shadowy nest.
Jenkins reaches out to hold back his partner as the situation spirals out of control.
Zambar insists that they cannot stand by while the princess's precious servant is in danger.
The black-haired man looks on with a stunned expression at the boy's sudden bravery. Jenkins watches the scene unfold with a somber and conflicted gaze.
One small hand reaches out and is caught in a firm, protective clasp in the darkness. A hand plunges deep into the writhing mass of shadowy hair with a wet sound.
Several heavy impacts strike against the entity as it is torn apart by blunt force. Bellatrix's glowing eyes peer through the dark veil as she is suddenly grabbed and pulled to safety.
A pale hand reaches out through a swirling vortex of shadow as a quiet gasp escapes. Bellatrix stares intently with her glowing purple eyes, wondering if her suspicions are finally confirmed.
A brilliant slash of purple and white energy tears through the midnight courtyard with a sharp whistle.
Severed strands of dark, ghostly hair fall silently around a steady and determined hand. Bellatrix stands firmly in the garden, clutching a thick mass of the captured spirit's shadowy tresses.
Keel looks up in stunned silence as the black-haired girl calls out his name with relief. Large, shimmering tears pool in the blonde boy's golden eyes as he processes the rescue.
With a sudden, desperate rush, the boy throws himself into the girl's arms for a tight embrace.
Bellatrix holds the child securely, her gaze focused and protective as the morning light begins to break.
The boy asks if she truly stayed just to ensure he wouldn't get hurt by the intruders.
A single heavy tear rolls down the blonde boy's cheek during the emotional moment. Bellatrix gently cups the boy's face while privately admitting she had only been feigning ignorance of his struggles.
The black-haired girl beams with a joyful smile, reflecting on the legend of the princess's immense physical strength. Bellatrix continues to cradle the boy's face as he weeps from the overwhelming kindness he's received.
A soft, comforting hand reaches out to pull a warm blanket over the resting child.
Bellatrix informs Jenkins that the boy will be sharing her room for the time being.
The red-haired man looks on with a somber and thoughtful expression as the boy sleeps.
Narrative text recalls the terrifying image of the demon princess that the boy first encountered upon his arrival.
Internal thoughts reflect on the initial expectation that the girl would be more ruthless than any demon.
Bellatrix watches over the room with a calm, steady gaze, her long black hair flowing behind her.
A floating question wonders what kind of destiny truly awaits such a mysterious and wounded child.
Zambar captures the dark spirit, who immediately begins to shriek and beg for his life under the lantern's glow.
Bellatrix offers a dark and sinister smile that sends a chill through the room.
A singular word hangs in the oppressive darkness, signaling a shift in the girl's temperament.
Bellatrix declares that the spirit must suffer for tormenting her servant while her subordinates watch with mixed reactions.
Terrified of his fate, the shadow spirit screams that he has hidden a valuable land deed within the estate.
The spirit's red eyes go wide with panic as he realizes his hostage situation is failing.
Narrative text notes that the princess requires tangible evidence before she will even consider the ghost's claims.
Zambar holds a candelabra high while Bellatrix prepares to investigate the spirit's desperate bargain. The girl stands before a desk littered with mysterious scrolls and various glass potion bottles. Bellatrix identifies a love potion, prompting the spirit to frantically insist the actual deed is locked in a vault. Bellatrix questions the ghost's honesty while the captured spirit eagerly confirms his willingness to cooperate. The dark spirit promises to reveal the secret password if the girl agrees to spare his miserable life.
Bellatrix holds the retrieved scroll from the vault as the spirit continues to plead for mercy from the shadows. Bellatrix orders Zambar to throw the spirit into the demon realm, prompting her men to debate her true nature.
The grand estate stands peaceful and bright as the narrative notes the many changes occurring within its walls.
Keel looks up at the black-haired man in admiration, asking how he managed to become so physically strong.
Zambar offers a confident smirk and asks if the young master desires to begin training under him.
The blonde boy's eyes sparkle with newfound determination at the prospect of gaining his own strength.
Zambar is momentarily taken aback by the boy's intense and unwavering focus.
Under the summer sun, Keel pushes himself through grueling training, while Zambar watches his progress with a sharp eye.
Narrative text highlights how the boy's sickly complexion has finally begun to brighten as the seasons change.
Bellatrix is pleasantly surprised by a massive stack of books, asking if Keel has truly mastered them all. Jenkins informs his mistress that the child is exceptionally astute and capable of answering any question.
Bellatrix smiles with a mischievous glint in her eyes as she prepares for the next phase of his education.
A small hand reaches up to pull another heavy volume from the towering library shelves.
Jenkins intercepts her hand with a quick grasp, addressing the girl with a flustered exclamation. The red-haired man insists that his duties do not include acting as a common handyman for the mansion. Bellatrix looks on with a confused expression as Jenkins bickers and gestures wildly toward the bookshelves. The black-haired girl lists her extensive chores, including cooking and cleaning, while wondering why Jenkins is so stressed. Jenkins screams in exhaustion amidst the library as a quick thud sounds. The red-haired man collapses in exhaustion. Exhaustion overwhelms the weary red-haired man.
Bellatrix reveals that she has summoned assistance from the demon realm.
Jenkins reacts with flustered confusion to his new nickname.
Bellatrix introduces Purr, a bear who tirelessly fled her kingdom for the girl.
Keel stares at the bear in shock. Purr happily boasts that she is capable of running without rest. Bellatrix notes her surprise at Purr's friend also arriving during the summoning. A cheerful greeting sounds from the Shaz. A blue-haired woman smiles from her hood. Ewer introduces herself as a high-ranking incubus while Bellatrix shields Keel's eyes. A hand brushes against Purr's soft fur. Keel touches the bear's side in curiosity.
Bellatrix orders the boastful newcomer to return home immediately. Ewer wears a devious and mocking smile.
Ewer declares she has no choice as she initiates a powerful magic ritual. Jenkins asks what she is doing as he is trapped by magically conjured thorns. A glowing magic circle forms underhand.
Ewer informs the group that she has officially set her heart on Jenkins.
Ewer warns that Jenkins will die instantly if she is ever away from his side.
Bellatrix demands to know if she's threatened. Ewer requests a 5-year chance to meet expectations before leaving without complaint.
Bellatrix mutters a frustrated curse under breath.
Narrative text explains the reverse Devil's Pact where the human follows the demon.
Ewer smiles after easily manipulating the ritual.
Bellatrix realizes the succubus is very cunning.
Bellatrix looks on with a troubled expression. Bellatrix asks why the demon wants to stay when nothing here interests her.
Ewer clings to Jenkins while claiming other succubi would be jealous of her position. Bellatrix prioritizes Jenkins's help in raising Keel despite the chaotic new housemate.
The girl remains focused on following the plot of the original storyline. Bellatrix agrees to a temporary 5-year contract as the subordinates cheer. A formal contract is drafted as Ewer and Purr celebrate the new arrangement. Bellatrix begins a story about a princess who rescued a prince-turned-frog.
The girl shares fairy tales with Keel.
Keel listens with an adorable, focused gaze. Narrative text recalls stories of poisoned apples and princesses in deep slumbers. The text notes that princes always arrive at the end to claim victory. Traditional fairy tales end with a wedding. Bellatrix reflects on how unrealistic such fairy tales are compared to her own life. The girl appears as a radiant angel. Bellatrix recounts the princess breaking the curse by kissing the fog. The girl finishes the story with happiness. Keel reflects silently on the princess's actions.
A sudden realization strikes the young boy.
Keel wonders if a kiss would allow them to stay together forever. The innocent boy asks Bellatrix to explain what a kiss is. Keel bows his head in bashful thought.
The blonde boy's golden eyes sparkle bravery.
Bellatrix is shocked, reflecting on her past life's nephew and wondering if Keel remembers the kisses she gave him or if no one has ever kissed him before.
The girl kisses the boy's cheek.
Shimmering lights surround the stunned boy. Keel looks up at the girl with a bewildered expression, asking why she did that.
Bellatrix dismisses the boy's confusion by stating that anyone is free to kiss whoever they like.
Bellatrix kisses the blonde boy's forehead. A close-up of a glowing purple eye. Bellatrix gasps and touches her face in confusion after her impulsive actions. Keel looks up with shimmering eyes. A massive pink cloud of joy erupts behind the girl as a quick poof sounds.
Bellatrix is overjoyed, realizing what it means to feel heart-fluttering as she exclaims her happiness.
The grand estate glows in autumn. A lavish feast fills the table. Ewer winks and gestures proudly with a large ladle, boasting about the effort she put into the day's meal. Jenkins and Xanbar look at the festive setup with confusion, questioning the occasion and why everything is so elaborate. Keel is taken completely by surprise when he learns that today is actually his birthday.
A strawberry birthday cake with candles.
Bellatrix presents the birthday cake. Bellatrix crowns Keel with paper stars.
Bellatrix claps her hands together with a sharp clap sounding, excitedly calling for everyone to start singing.
The table overflows with gourmet food. A close-up of the strawberry cake.
The entire group stands in awkward silence around the table while rhythmic claps sound out.
Bellatrix pauses with her hand to her chin, starting to ask the others a question.
The girl asks the group if they actually know the birthday song. Jenkins looks puzzled and admits that it is his first time hearing of such a song.
Bellatrix reassures him that it is fine, promising to teach them the song another time.
Bellatrix encourages Keel to make a wish, suggesting they pretend the song was sung and promising that all his wishes will be granted.
Keel looks up thoughtfully, wondering if he can truly have anything he wants.
Keel's face shows bashful, hopeful thought.
Per wishes to marry while Ewer interrupts the moment by wishing to go hunting.
Ewer wishes to travel to the city to meet men, Xanbar threatens to eat them all, and Jenkins insists only the birthday boy should make a wish.
The demons reflect on the taste of humans and their desire to be the main character while questioning the strange human custom of celebrating birthdays.
Bellatrix sternly orders that only the birthday boy makes a wish, while the others bicker about healing speeds and Jenkins's unnecessary kindness to Xanbar.
Bellatrix officially proclaims that November 10th is now Keel's day. The blonde boy is frozen in shock, questioning if he correctly heard the date she mentioned. Dramatic title text fills the screen.
Keel's internal thoughts spiral with suspicion, wondering how Bellatrix could possibly know his birthday.
Keel stares ahead with wide eyes.
A dramatic vision depicts an older Keel reflecting on his rebirth, wondering if the girl has been observing him for over a decade to know such a secret.
Back in the room, the boy asks Bellatrix for a clear explanation of what a kiss is.
Keel looks up with curious eyes.
As Bellatrix kisses him again, the boy reacts with a frustrated exclamation in his mind.
Keel looks down with somber axe.
Keel looks at Bellatrix with a troubled gaze, asking why she chose today of all days to be his birthday.
A close-up of a mischievous eye.
Bellatrix leans close with a grin.
Bellatrix claims an angel visited her to reveal the date, which the boy repeats in total disbelief.
A close-up on Keel's eyes reveals his deep suspicion as he wonders if this is truly just a coincidence.
Bellatrix crowns Keel as the prince, declaring that he was always destined for the role from the very beginning.
Bellatrix commands that everyone must address Keel as prince today, while Xanbar mocks the boy's weakness and Jenkins tells him not to provoke the young lady. Per raises a hand excitedly, announcing there is something she wants to do with the prince, prompting Bellatrix to ask what it is.
The bear explains the rules of their game, stating that if you cover your eyes, the seeker will catch you. Per claims that the seeker eats whoever they catch, causing Bellatrix to frantically ask if she's out of her mind and why she'd want to play tag with the boy.
Per looks puzzled, insisting she heard that playing tag with princes always ends with them being eaten.
A sudden, sharp whoosh sounding from behind catches the group's attention.
Ewer realizes she made a mistake and quickly tries to correct herself.
Bellatrix demands they play tag like humans instead of the animal kingdom, and Jenkins rushes to agree with her. A banner announces the official start of round 1. Jenkins signals for the game to start with Per as the feeker. A thunderous roar sounds as a massive black figure lunges toward Jenkins. Per lands heavily on Jenkins, who complains that such aggressive force definitely qualifies as cheating. Bellatrix adds a new rule that everyone must only use 2 legs to run, while Xanbar's Black Panther form tusks in annoyance. Round 2 commences with Ewer taking her turn as the seeker as Jenkins gives the signal.
A sharp whoosh sounds as Ewer spreads her wings and dives toward the group.
Bellatrix points an accusing finger at Ewer, declaring that flying is also a form of cheating.
Xanbar prepares for round 3 as the new seeker. A large hand reaches out toward the boy.
A sudden, heavy thud sounds as Xanbar is forced to the ground while the others watch in silent confusion.
Jenkins asks if that counts as cheating too, but Bellatrix looks away and claims it does not.
Per cries out that the lady isn't playing fair and asks why she always takes the young master's side.
Bellatrix argues that Keel is just a child, but Per insists she's still a baby bear despite being over 2 centuries old.
Per argues that 200 years is still young for a bear, and Xanbar notes that 500 years is merely the beginning of their lives.
Bellatrix offers a warm, knowing smile.
Per excitedly asks to be the prince tomorrow, and Bellatrix agrees while Keel reflects on how easily the bear got her way.
A close-up of Bellatrix's gentle, radiant smile.
Bellatrix suggests moving on to another activity, and Keel realizes he finally has a chance to speak his mind.
The boy reaches for her dress, stating that since he is currently the prince.
The blonde boy looks up at her with hopeful eyes.
Per interrupts by saying she wants to get married tomorrow, and Ewer suggests she marry Keel, leaving the boy in total shock. Keel grows frustrated with the constant obstacles preventing him from making his single wish.
Bellatrix firmly declines the idea with a single word.
Bellatrix looks at Keel with a serious, focused expression. Keel is stunned by her refusal, remembering her story about a human princess and a frog prince getting married. Jenkins stands alone in deep, somber thought. Sitting alone on the steps, Keel wonders if humans and those from the animal kingdom are truly forbidden from being together. Keel reflects on how his education as a crown prince never mentioned the secrets of the animal kingdom.
The boy wonders if the Imperial Palace holds more information on the subject.
Narrative text explains that the palace is the center of knowledge, and Keel resolves to establish himself quickly to find the truth.
Keel realizes he must secure the power to protect his own life to investigate the palace freely.
The boy reflects on how he has relied on the sacred power of his pendant until now. Keel clutches his pendant with unwavering determination. Jenkins stares pensively out the window through the golden autumn leaves.
Jenkins looks back over his shoulder with a deeply troubled expression.
Jenkins exhales a heavy sigh as Bellatrix watches him from her desk. Bellatrix notices Jenkins's recent gloom and asks if something is wrong, calling him the only useful person on the estate. Jenkins admits he's been thinking about what she mentioned during the young master's birthday celebration.
Bellatrix asks if he means the song, but Jenkins clarifies he's talking about the subject of marriage.
Jenkins speaks quietly of a marriage between a human and a demon.
Bellatrix's eyes widen as she realizes she completely forgot that Jenkins is a half-demon.
Jenkins states his preference for humans, causing Bellatrix to awkwardly apologize for her previous remarks. Bellatrix exhales a weary sigh, realizing she must reveal a significant truth to move forward.
Bellatrix decides to share a major secret, informing a stunned Jenkins that Keel is actually the crown prince.
Jenkins is completely skeptical of her claim, dismissing it as nonsense while Bellatrix insists it is the truth. Jenkins reflects on the possibility of marriage between species, momentarily considering if such a thing could happen with Purr. Jenkins admits that despite the girl's care for him, he believes it is impossible for the boy to be the crown prince. Jenkins explains that the defining trait of royal bloodlines is the possession of magical powers. Bellatrix remains unfazed by his doubt, telling him he does not have to believe her if he chooses not to.
Bellatrix looks at him with sincerity, assuring Jenkins that she would never reject him for being a half-demon.
Jenkins is visibly moved, looking at her with wide, appreciative eyes as he processes her acceptance. A faint, warm smile crosses Jenkins's face as he acknowledges her kindness. Shifting to business, Bellatrix asks Jenkins if he can use a sword, explaining that she wants to buy them for Keel.
Bellatrix reflects on the dangerous birthday game of tag, realizing how vulnerable the boy is compared to the powerful demons around him.
Bellatrix grows serious, contemplating the need for protection since they currently lack divine powers to guard against future dangers.
Bellatrix decides she should teach the boy martial arts, imagining herself as a lion playfully overpowering him in training. Jenkins suggests they travel to a city to find a quality sword, and Bellatrix immediately orders him to prepare a carriage.
Bellatrix is impressed that Jenkins managed to secure a carriage, which he explains was lent to him by a helpful innkeeper.
A sudden, sharp thud sounding as someone approaches the group near the gate. Keel joins them and asks where they are going, and Bellatrix invites him along to help pick out his new swords. The boy is thrilled by the offer, admitting he had already been thinking about wanting to learn swordsmanship himself. Keel nods eagerly as Bellatrix signals for them to set off on their journey together. The carriage travels through the woods toward Dazer, a large city within the dukedom that should provide what they need. Inside the carriage, Keel spots a distant landmark through the window and asks Jenkins what it is. Narrative text explains that the building is a temple, a sacred place dedicated to worshiping gods. Jenkins confirms that the Heritas Temple is the largest of its kind and contains the most holy relics.
Bellatrix is intrigued by the mention of relics, and Keel asks if they can visit the temple together next time.
Bellatrix worries about finding demons in such a holy place, while Jenkins scoffs at her concern.
Jenkins explains that loot from the demon world is kept there, but Bellatrix dismisses the idea since it is not their current destination.
Jenkins continues to describe the unique nature of the temple as the only one storing such significant artifacts. As Keel asks about their route, a sudden heavy jolt sounding interrupts his question.
A thunderous crash sounds as the carriage is violently tossed onto its side by an unseen force.
Jenkins is thrown against the carriage wall with a sharp, pained cry as the vehicle rolls over.
Bellatrix is caught in the chaos of the tumbling vehicle, her eyes wide with shock.
A sudden, sharp crack sounding echoes through the forest as the carriage frame breaks. The carriage comes to a rest with one of its wheels completely broken off and lying in the grass. Jenkins instinctively shields Bellatrix from the impact with his arm as they settle in the wreckage. Jenkins looks down at the girl with deep concern, making sure she is unharmed after the crash.
Jenkins shouts at Ewer for her recklessness, while she accusingly asks if he caused the accident on purpose. A sudden, sharp shout sounding from outside asks what is going on with the overturned vehicles.
Ewer finds the accident amusing, while Jenkins and Bellatrix angrily order him to get off the top of the carriage.
A sudden, sharp bang sounding signals a burst of frustrated energy from the wreckage. A small cat investigates the scene from the roof as Jenkins wonders how the disaster happened.
The carriage lies ruined and on its side in the middle of the quiet forest path.
Ewer blames the cat for not watching the road, but the cat insists that rocks were flying through the air unexpectedly. Bellatrix closes her eyes in frustration, exhausted by the bickering and the delay to their journey. The girl focuses her magical energy, pointing a single finger toward the heavy wreckage.
A massive burst of purple power sounding restores the carriage to its upright position, leaving Ewer in awe.
Jenkins surveys the damage to the old vehicle and asks if they should just replace it with a new one.
Bellatrix reflects on how much slower travel is when protecting a group of diverse and uncoordinated demons and humans.
Jenkins notes the marginal nature of their progress, while Bellatrix laments having to do all the magical heavy lifting herself.
Sunlight filters through the dense forest canopy.
Bellatrix instructs the group to rest and eat while she is away for an hour. The carriage waits quietly on the sun-drenched forest path.
A sudden, sharp rustle sounding as feet move through the tall grass.
A close-up of Bellatrix's wide, intense purple high. Bellatrix returns to find the carriage ruined and realizes a dark event occurred in her absence.
Magic circles glow with purple energy beneath a quick, determined step.
Zanbar asks what happened as he supports a severely wounded, red-haired man.
The dark-haired man continues to hold the bloodied, unconscious Jenkins.
A sudden heavy thud sounds as Jenkins collapses while Bellatrix rushes toward him in panic.
Jenkins explains they were ambushed by bandits targeting Ewer, and Bellatrix immediately asks about the boy.
Bellatrix is overcome with worry, demanding to know what happened to Keel.
Jenkins reaches out with a blood-stained hand to address his levy.
Bellatrix holds the injured man close amidst the quiet forest wreckage.
The girl scoffs at the idea of divine beings as her anger flares.
A sudden, sharp whoosh sounding as Bellatrix turns away from the wounded man.
Bellatrix commands Zanbar to follow her to find the others.
Jenkins lies on the ground, his face and clothes covered in blood.
Trees blur as someone rushes through the woods at high speed.
Bellatrix runs along a wooden bridge, heading toward a distant settlement.
The girl's eye glows with a cold, predatory light. A massive, sprawling bandit camp comes into view from a distance.
Bellatrix leaps fearlessly over the perimeter fence into the center of the camp.
The girl places a hand on a bandit's forehead with a chilling smile.
A sudden, thunderous crash sounding as a massive explosion levels the immediate area.
Dust settles as bandits shout to capture the intruder while Bellatrix stands her ground. A slow, wet drip sounding as blood falls from a hand.
Bellatrix calls upon Zanbar, whose demonic silhouette looms large and menacing behind her.
The girl issues a ruthless command to consume everyone in sight. A sudden, sharp whoosh sounding as invisible blades tear through the bandit ranks. Lifeless bodies litter the ground as the oppressive scent of blood fills the air.
Bellatrix walks through the carnage, her dress stained with the blood of her enemies.
A close-up of the girl's glowing, merciless purple eyes.
Bellatrix finds a horrific scene inside a building where Ewer lies impaled and Keel sits nearby.
The blonde boy sits in shock near the wounded succubus amidst twisted metal wire.
A sudden, sharp cry sounding as Bellatrix calls out to the terrified boy.
Bellatrix stands before him, her appearance transformed by the brutal battle.
The girl gently urges Keel to stand up and move.
Keel looks up with trembling eyes, barely recognizing his protector.
Bellatrix's rage boils over as she asks what the bandits did to him. The girl vows to kill everyone responsible for the boy's suffering. Bellatrix checks on Keel's condition with a sudden soft concern. Keel stares up at her with shimmering golded eyes.
Keel reflects on how deeply the girl was worried about his safety.
The blonde boy reaches up to touch Bellatrix's blood-splattered cheek.
A close-up of a hand clenching with newfound resolve.
Bellatrix reassures him that she is unhowed. The girl states that her strength as a princess is more than enough for this fight.
A desperate voice begs to be saved from the cursed blade.
A sudden, sharp clang sounding as Bellatrix grabs the sword and unleashes a burst of purple flame. Bellatrix examines the dark energy on her hand and concludes that the slow healing is due to a holy relic, noting that celestial beings occasionally make useful things. Bellatrix asks the blue-haired succubus about her condition, and the wounded woman explains she only needs to consume their enemies to recover, earning her lady's approval. The dark-haired man reports that the battle is finished as the succubus continues to eye her potential meal. The dark-haired man announces he will go retrieve the injured red-haired man. Bellatrix reminds herself that their original goal was to acquire weapons for the boy. They decide to simply pillage the camp instead of continuing their long journey to the city, despite concerns for the red-haired man's recovery. Bellatrix orders the collection of all available weapons and treasures to bring back to their base.
The blue-haired succubus strikes a playful pose to show she has fully recovered her strength.
Bellatrix observes her companion's renewed energy while the girl confirms she feels completely restored.
A sudden, soft sounding as Bellatrix dismisses her own exhaustion, though the succubus teases her about being a ruthless princess.
Bellatrix contemplates the dark nature of demonic power, which relies on consuming the vitality of others to sustain itself.
The girl turns her attention to a sleek, dark sword while still covered in the blood of her enemies. A sudden, sharp arg sounding as Bellatrix brandishes the blade and unleashes a violent swirl of purple energy.
Bellatrix's eyes glow as she decides to absorb the magic within the celestial weapon rather than consuming a human life.
High above the forest, a grand stone temple stands as a reminder of the celestial influence the bandits stole from.
The carriage resumes its journey through the woods under the warm glow of the setting sun.
Bellatrix examines the high-quality blade she secured, realizing they no longer need to travel to the distant city.
Inside the carriage, the succubus boasts about her successful recovery while the rest of the group settles in for the ride. Bellatrix leans in close to the blonde boy, showing him quiet affection as they travel. The blonde boy holds the massive black sword, seemingly mesmerized by the powerful weapon he has been gifted.
Bellatrix watches the boy with a look of pure satisfaction. The girl's eyes sparkle with joy as she reflects on their current situation.
The red-haired man questions her about giving the boy a discarded item, but she insists it was a deliberate find.
The red-haired man remains unconvinced of her story, while the blue-haired succubus looks on with a skeptical expression.
Bellatrix silences the group's bickering, stating she is in a foul mood despite the successful loot.
The narrative mentions the significant wealth they gained from the bandits and their potion business.
The red-haired man offers to find a professional instructor to train the boy in combat.
Bellatrix instructs him to handle the basic sword training himself while delegating the physical conditioning to the dark-haired demon. The red-haired man laments his difficult relationship with the other demon as Bellatrix walks away.
Bellatrix strolls through the palace garden toward a grand fountain while the red-haired man follows.
The blonde boy watches from a distance with a contemplative and solemn expression.
Keel reflects on how perfectly his plan is unfolding, having become the center of the girl's world without her even knowing it.
The blonde boy smiles brightly as he remembers the effort he put into becoming his lady's favorite person.
A sudden, quick tap sounding as a firm step echoes across the stone floor of the estate.
Bellatrix notices the boy's presence near the garden fountain and asks what he wants.
Keel presents a large tray of fresh pastries and suggests they share a snack together. The boy gently offers a pastry to his protector, his eyes fixed on her.
Bellatrix happily accepts the treat, seemingly unaware of the boy's deep focus on her. Keel continues to watch the girl with a gaze full of intense, hidden resolve.
Snow blankets the massive, ornate palace as winter takes hold of the dukedom. A sudden, low sounding as a gaze focuses on the world through a frost-covered window.
Bellatrix studies an ancient book, deciding it is time to introduce a new element to their plans for the boy.
The book reveals her thought that the blonde boy needs to interact with someone his own age. An illustration depicts the blonde boy and a pink-haired girl representing his future connection with a girl named Roseanne.
The text explains the need for a female companion who will champion the boy's romantic future.
Ma Ayu is introduced as the candidate with a memory of her meeting the boy in the snow years ago.
Two pairs of small hands share a single piece of warm bread in the cold. Bellatrix struggles to remember the specific location of their original meeting from the story she knows.
The girl resolves to leave the palace and search for the new ally herself. Bellatrix worries that her brief absence might cause issues for the others.
The blue-haired succubus explains to the boy that they are playing pretend to help him relax while they wait. The blonde boy holds his teacup with a look of mild surprise. A sudden wet spit sounding as the boy chokes on his tea.
Keel wipes his face, wondering why his protector has been gone so long. The succubus reassures the boy that the princess will definitely return soon.
A sudden, soft sounding as the woman struggles to find a convincing answer.
The blonde boy turns to the large bear and asks for information about the girl's return.
The bear hides in fear, insisting it is just a baby that knows nothing.
Keel looks skeptical of the bear's sudden claim of ignorance.
The blonde boy stands near a massive black bear resting in the courtyard smout. A sudden wide yawn sounding as the dark bear wakes from its nap.
The dark-haired man approaches and dismisses the boy's constant questioning about Bellatrix's return.
The blonde boy demands to know how the man could be so unconcerned about the girl. The dark-haired man admits he isn't worried, though the questioning clearly bothers him.
The man speculates that the princess might have abandoned them because they were unreliable.
A sudden heavy thump sounding as the boy's world shatters at the thought of being left behind.
The dark-haired man is panicked to see tears welling in the boy's eyes. The two stand in silence amidst the cold, snowy palace grounds.
The blonde boy's eyes narrow with an intense and shimmering focus.
The man suggests that Jenkins might have more information about where the girl went. A sudden, relieved pew sounding as the man escapes the awkward situation.
The blonde boy calls out to the red-haired man while surrounded by open books.
Keel sits alone at a grand desk, immersed in his dice.
The red-haired man wonders how many more times he will have to answer the boy's repetitive questions.
Jenkins explains that demonic beings perceive time very differently than mortals do. The narrative notes that the period of waiting feels like an eternity for the child.
The blonde boy stares at his book with a look of profound loneliness.
A voice calls out to the young master to get his attention from his studies.
The narrative warns the boy against placing too much trust in the demonic princess.
Jenkins reflects on the lack of duty found in the hearts of demons compared to humans.
A sudden low hum sounding as the scene shifts to a snow-covered town.
A young girl peeks cautiously from around a stone wall in the cold city. Bellatrix stands in the middle of the street, her expression one of grim determination. The girl laments the difficulty of finding a specific brunette in such a massive place.
Bellatrix walks alone through the winter streets, lost in her thoughts. The girl pauses to look up at the gray winter sky while feeling the cold. Bellatrix worries about the consequences of altering the original story she knows. She realizes that her target must be working as a maid for the girl named Roseanne.
The girl's eyes glow as she plans to find where the job openings are posted.
A sudden, triumphant eureka sounding as she identifies her next destination.
A small dark paw steps onto the snowy stone ledge of a grand estate. The massive, ornate mansion of Count Priscilla stands cold in the winter air. A small black cat scurries across the garden wall, unimpressed by the estate's size.
The sun reflects off the glass of a large frost-covered window.
A black cat with glowing red eyes peeks curiously through the window into the mansion.
A maid enters a room while the hidden cat watches from a high vantage point.
The black cat peeks through the gap of a partially open door.
A cat's paw lands on a stack of important-looking documents on a desk.
The black cat is shocked by the sheer wealth and resources being spent by the noble family.
Bellatrix feels a sudden pang of guilt over Jenkins working without pay.
A sudden sharp clack sounding as the cat is startled while exploring the noble's desk.
The pink-haired girl smiles with a look of pure, infectious joy. Bellatrix realizes she must escape before the girl can catch her. A servant's voice catches Bellatrix off guard as they call for their matey.
Roseanne Priscilla, the story's protagonist, is scolded for her clumsy attempt to catch the cat.
Roseanne apologizes to the small cat for accidentally hurting its tail.
The pink-haired girl gently cradles the black cat in her arms.
Narrative text describes a future where Keel elevates Roseanne to a crown princess. Bellatrix recalls the original ending where she departs for the demon world after Keel's success.
The black cat remains still and silent while held by the girl.
A sudden sharp slash sounding as a violent outburst erupts in the quiet room.
The servants scream in horror as the cat suddenly attacks Lady Roseanne.
Roseanne stares blankly as blood begins to drip from fresh scratches on her cheek.
The butler cries out in alarm at the sight of his lady's injured face.
Bellatrix regrets her impulsive action just as a firm hand seizes her.
The angry servants decide to execute the cat immediately for hurting their lady.
Roseanne defends the cat, claiming her sudden hug was the cause of the attack.
The servants notice the cat's unnatural red eyes and halt their actions. The staff realizes the creature is actually a demonic monster. Bellatrix realizes her cover is blown and prepares to unleash her power.
A sudden heavy sounding as the man is repelled by a surge of purple magic.
A sudden wet splat sounding as demonic energy paints the walls in blood-red streaks. Bellatrix flees the estate, glancing back at the chaos she left behind.
Roseanne remains on the floor, stunned by the terrifying display of power.
The black cat closes its eyes to focus on reversing its transformation. A black cat's paws trudge through the deep snow of the forest.
Bellatrix returns to her human form amidst the cold winter woods.
The girl looks down in silence, questioning her own motives for the attack.
Bellatrix fears she is becoming a true villainess and worries about scarring Roseanne.
The girl reflects on how close she came to causing a permanent injury.
A terrifying thought of the potential consequences haunts the girl's mind.
Bellatrix stands alone in the cold, still grappling with her impulsive actions.
The girl wonders if the role of the villainess is beginning to influence her soul.
A sudden sharp smack sounding as Bellatrix slaps her own face to snap out it.
Bellatrix regains her focus and marches toward the snowy sea.
A cheerful shopkeeper welcomes Bellatrix as she enters a local establishment.
Bellatrix begins her search by inquiring about a 10-year-old brunette crow.
The man claims to know a girl named Orin who matches her description. Bellatrix quickly realizes this is not the person she is looking for.
The girl grows suspicious of the man's vague comments about the children.
The man explains that homeless children are a frequent sight in the area.
The man cruelly notes that no one cares when these children vanish.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Bellatrix violently slams the man's head onto the table. Furious, Bellatrix demands to know the location of the trafficked children.
The scene shifts to a young girl begging for coins in the town square.
The young brunette looks up with a hollow and tired expression.
A sudden metallic clink sounding as a generous coin is dropped into the girl's cup.
The child stares in disbelief at the black-haired girl standing before her.
Bellatrix turns away from the beggar girl without saying a word.
Bellatrix stands before the shivering beggar girl in the smell.
The black-haired girl turns away from the child and walks away.
Narration explains how Keel survived childhood in such a dangerous place.
A memory shows the brunette girl and young Keel huddling for warmth.
Bellatrix closes her eyes while reflecting on the harshness of the story. The massive, ornate mansion of the demon kingdom glows in the night.
The blue-haired succubus reacts with shock as the large bear maid approaches. Bellatrix staggers in the hallway, looking completely drained from her journey. The bear maid and the succubus turn to see someone approaching them. A small black cat sleeps peacefully on a dark, textured rug.
Close-up of the sleeping black cat's calm and tired face.
Keel sits on the floor watching the sleeping cat with concern. Jenkins and the succubus cheer in relief that the princess has finally returned.
Jenkins asks if she's sick, but the succubus reassures Keel that she's just exhausted and will recover soon.
Keel stares intensely at the resting cat with shimmering, worried eyes.
The succubus invites the boy to sleep beside the princess if he is that worried about her.
The blue-haired woman tells the boy to rest and wait for tomorrow.
Jenkins and the succubus walk away while arguing about who gets to sleep in the longest. Moonbeams illuminate the grand bedroom where the boy and the cat sleep.
Keel watches over the sleeping animal with a gentle, loving smile. Narrative text appears over the cat as the boy gazes at her.
Keel embraces the black cat while wishing they could stay together forever. The boy rests his face against the soft fur of the sleeping cat. Bright morning sun fills the bedroom through the large, ornate windows. A sudden soft blink sounding as Keel wakes up in the bright light.
The blonde boy looks down at the bed while feeling for his companion.
A sudden, gentle tap sounding as a small black paw touches his face. Bellatrix realizes she completely overdid her exhaustion while in her cat form.
A sudden quick blink sounding as Keel looks at the small pager. The blonde boy asks the black cat if she is feeling anything. A sudden soft thud sounding as Keel nuzzles the little Errol. The black cat closes its eyes while being held by the boy.
Bellatrix is glad to be home and wonders how long it has been since her last bath.
The black-haired girl pumps her fist with a look of pure, joyful determination.
Bellatrix is startled by a sudden, loud chatter sounding from the hallway.
The bearmaid cries out in shock after realizing it mistook the princess for a common cat. The dark-haired man dismisses the commotion and tells the others not to make a fuss.
Jenkins and the succubus are horrified by the thought of the princess leaving again.
The two servants panic over the chaos that another departure would cause.
Bellatrix calls out to the group to get their attention from the hallway.
The black-haired girl waves happily while her servants look on in stunned silence.
Keel runs forward and pulls Bellatrix into a desperate and clinging hug.
The blonde boy buries his face in the girl's dress while holding her tightly. A sudden, low creak sounding as the dark-haired man watches the emotional scene.
Bellatrix looks down in surprise and asks the servants if they mistreated the boy.
The dark-haired man is offended and demands to know when he ever did that. The man stammers as he tries to explain his earlier dismissive behavior.
A sudden soft slide sounding as Bellatrix reaches out to comfort the boy. Keel looks up at the princess with tearful and pleading eyes.
Bellatrix realizes the boy was just worried and embraces him with a warm smile.
The black-haired girl looks ahead contemplatively.
Outside the mansion gates, the red-haired man tells his companion to stop clinging to him.
A sudden soft smack sounding as a voice insists their bodies are already connected.
The red-haired man looks annoyed and tells the blue-haired woman she is being too close.
Bellatrix watches the pair in silence.
The girl wonders what reward she should give Jenkins since he works so hard.
The blue-haired succubus is delighted to hear she can stay.
Bellatrix explains that the woman's blood is already being used for medicine, proving her usefulness.
A sudden, sharp rustle sounding as the black-haired girl is taken aback by a quick movement.
Bellatrix wishes she had been warned about the succubus's eccentric behavior while clenching her teeth. The woman beams while holding a heart.
A long, snowy street view appears.
Jenkins, Keel, and Bellatrix walk through the cold town together.
The blonde boy recognizes the place they have arrived at.
Bellatrix smiles while looking at the town.
Bellatrix spots a shivering girl huddling in the snow and declares she found her.
A sudden, sharp rustle sounding as Bellatrix prepares to set the stage for the novel's future. Bellatrix asks the boy if he can see the brunette child in the distance.
Keel confirms that he sees the girl while Bellatrix points her out.
The princess hands a loaf of bread to the boy with a meaningful look.
Keel is confused by the sudden request and asks why she wants him to do this.
Bellatrix smiles brightly and explains she wants to make a new friend. Jenkins encourages the boy to get along with humans, though Keel expresses his reluctance.
The girl believes this child will be a significant asset to the boy later in life.
Keel asks how she knows the future, and she jokingly credits her status as an Animal Kingdom princess.
Close-up of the boy's golden eye.
Keel walks toward the beggar girl while Jenkins and Bellatrix watch from behind. The blonde boy stands before the shivering child with a loaf of bread in hand.
Keel recalls his own past as a lonely beggar while questioning the girl's helpfulness. Young Keel huddles in the cold.
He wonders if it is truly a coincidence that she is always one step ahead.
Keel stands over the shivering child.
The beggar girl looks up tiredly.
A sudden soft thud sounding as Keel drops the large loaf of bread before her.
Keel watches the girl in silence.
A sudden, loud crunching sounding as the girl eats, followed by rhythmic footsteps as the boy departs.
Bellatrix pulls the boy into a hug and praises him for giving the bread. The girl holds Keel's face while he asks if she wants to know his name. Bellatrix inquisitively asks about the girl's name, age, and family status.
Realizing the girl must be thirsty, Bellatrix suggests offering her some milk as well. Keel reaches out and offers a bottle of milk to the eating row.
The boy holds the milk bottle. The brunette girl is shocked by the sudden kindness.
A sudden, rhythmic clatter sounding as a horse-drawn carriage travels through the snowy woods. Inside the carriage, the blonde boy rests his head on Bellatrix's lap.
Keel sleeps peacefully at her lap.
Narrative text suggests that the path ahead is finally cleared for success.
Bellatrix looks ahead with a sow.
A distant, high tower stands tall against the glowing sky.
Bellatrix asks about the wizards in the tower, and Jenkins describes the last one as a gloomy recluse. Bellatrix asks the red-haired man how he knows so much, and Jenkins explains his prior acquaintance with the wizard.
Jenkins claims he was the person who originally taught summoning circle techniques to the wizard. Jenkins explains that only specific entities can be summoned based on magic power and questions if Bellatrix is from the human world. The black-haired girl looks down with a shadowed, serious expression on her face.
A question is posed regarding the specific ingredients required to activate a summoning circle. Jenkins reveals the grim reality that the required ingredient for the ritual is a person's life.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Jenkins realizes the sacrifice made was the reason Bellatrix sought out the young boy. Jenkins expresses his regret over the used life and apologizes for his intrusive line of questioning.
Jenkins warns that complicated explanations will only make the boy's life more difficult from now on.
Bellatrix listens to the advice while maintaining a focused and determined expression.
The black-haired girl stands centered in a swirling, brilliant aura of magical purple energy.
Bellatrix looks ahead with a profile view, showing a resolved and calm demeanor.
Bellatrix holds the blonde boy and reassures her companions that she has fully recovered.
The girl reflects on how the boy would have endured hardships regardless of the wizard's fate.
Narrative text ponders if a protagonist truly needs a tragic backstory to be successful.
A horse-drawn carriage pulls up to the entrance of the massive and ornate mansion.
Keel stands in the garden while pondering the true meaning of the summoning that brought Bellatrix.
The boy notes that Jenkins knows about the summoning and reflects on the major differences in this new timeline.
Images of Bellatrix and the empty pendant highlight the significant changes from the boy's original past.
Keel feels that the current events have become distorted compared to what he once knew.
The blonde boy wonders if the girl already knew he was destined to be the crown prince.
A sudden, cheerful shout sounding as a white-haired maid presents a massive, glittering roast feast.
The entire group stands around the table in stunned silence at the scale of the meal.
Bellatrix encourages the boy to eat, but her attention is caught by his sudden distress. Bellatrix is startled to see the boy crying and urgently asks what is wrong.
A sudden, frantic gasp sounding as the girl asks for the last known location of a missing item.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Keel realizes his precious memento has disappeared.
Bellatrix orders everyone to find the pendant while the dark-haired man dismisses it as a trivial object.
Keel reflects on the heavy weight of his identity as the crown prince.
The black-haired girl desperately hopes that the important item hasn't been lost for good.
Bellatrix emphasizes that the pendant is the only physical proof of the boy's royal status. A memory of the boy's mother appears amidst a field of soft pink flowers. Jenkins stands by the fountain, recalling the mother's warning to never lose the precious locket.
A sudden, soft splash sounding as Jenkins spots and retrieves the golden pendant from the water.
Jenkins opens the locket to reveal a hidden note with the name Keel written on it. Jenkins asks Bellatrix if she realizes the true significance of what the locket contains.
Bellatrix stands frozen and silent as she gazes at the boy after the discovery.
The black-haired girl swallows hard while preparing herself to deliver a life-changing truth.
Bellatrix honestly reveals to the boy that his father is actually the emperor of the realm.
Close-up of Keel's golden eye shimmering with shock at the massive revelation. Bellatrix reflects on how she had been mentally preparing for this specific moment to arrive.
A sudden soft thump sounding as Keel asks if her kindness was only due to his royal blood.
Close-up of the boy's wide golden eye as he waits for her answer.
Bellatrix gives a bright, heartwarming smile and explains she simply likes him for who he is.
Bellatrix pulls the boy into a warm hug and tells him he must never lose the pendant again.
A sudden soft creak sounding as the boy's boots shift while he thanks her for her care.
A sudden soft smack sounding as Keel pulls the girl close and gives her a surprise kiss.
Both Bellatrix and Jenkins are frozen in absolute wide-eyed shock at the boy's unexpected action. Jenkins clarifies that he wasn't asking for a kiss and reminds Bellatrix about the house rules for the boy.
Bellatrix covers her blushing face with her hands, bewildered by the boy's newfound and sudden charm.
A sudden heavy thud sounding as Bellatrix turns her head in surprise.
A sudden sharp gasp sounding as Bellatrix questions if the teddy bear servant ate something.
A sudden sharp gasp sounding as the bear claims he merely kissed someone instead of eating.
Bellatrix reflects on how her family dynamic has become quite problematic.
Ira remembers that the young boy's pendant was a bribe used to contact the Imperial Wizard.
Ira tells Bellatrix that the boy will be a crowned prince while she wonders why he ever doubted her.
Bellatrix is shocked to learn that Ira already spoiled the secret about his future to the boy.
The black-haired girl lies among the flowers while the red-haired man looks on.
Bellatrix worries that Keel will become socially awkward when he finally leaves for the palace. The princess looks toward the horizon with a serious and pensive expression. Bellatrix believes the boy needs a place to interact with village children his age. Bellatrix suddenly realizes that sparring partners are the perfect way for him to make friends.
The princess looks delighted with her new plan for the boy's social life. Ivor begins to sweat as he realizes he will likely have to organize the entire class.
Bellatrix decides she will simply order Xanbar to take over the task for him. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Ivor facepalms while imagining the demon's refusal to help. The princess tells the red-haired man to just have the children swing swords around.
Bellatrix warns Ira to stop making excuses or she will split him in two.
A sudden, weary sigh sounding as the red-haired man yields to her intense pressure.
Ira resolves to never let anyone look down on the princess for being a half-demon. Close-up of the elegant blue gown and the sparkling jewelry.
The scene transitions to an outdoor swordsmanship class for local village children.
A close-up shows a meticulously planned workout routine written on paper.
Bellatrix explains she learned to organize such routines in her past life. The princess observes that Keel is still not interacting with the other students at all.
Village children eagerly report their training progress to the black-haired demon instructor. Young Keel looks back with a lonely and distant gaze while the others play.
Bellatrix decides she should go and talk to the isolated blonde boy herself.
The princess approaches the gathering of students with a calm demeanor.
The village children are immediately captivated by the black-haired girl's beauty.
Bellatrix stands gracefully amidst a backdrop of blooming garden flowers.
The curious children swarm around her, asking for her name and age.
One child mentions scary rumors about Bella, making her wonder how they spread.
The princess smiles while enjoying the friendly attention of the young village children.
Bellatrix gently denies the rumors that she is a scary or mean person.
Young Keel watches the scene, reflecting on his isolation within the mansion. The blonde boy observes the large crowd that has gathered around the princess.
A village boy looks at her with wide eyes in admiration.
Keel wonders why everyone is suddenly so interested in the black-haired girl.
Bellatrix calls out to the boy to bring him into the social supple.
The blonde boy clenches his fist while looking slightly uncomfortable. The princess introduces Keel to the kids, encouraging them to spar together to become friends.
Bellatrix places a comforting hand on the blonde boy's shoulder to reassure him.
Keel looks down with a troubled expression as he processes the sudden social demand.
Later, the blonde boy finds the blue-haired woman and asks about the princess's location.
The blue-haired woman relishes her rare moment of peace while the princess is away. The blue-haired maid smiles with pure joy at her lack of chores.
The blonde boy admits he isn't enjoying the recent changes to his daily routine.
The blue-haired woman explains the princess is attending a meeting in the village. The blue-haired woman expresses her mild surprise at the boy's serious question. Ornate iron gates stand before the snowy garden of a grand mansion. The blue-haired succubus asks the blonde boy if his name is Bowen, but Keel corrects her, stating it is Brune. Close-up of Keel looking ahead with a serious expression.
A sudden soft thump sounding as Keel looks slightly annoyed.
Keel stands at the mansion's entryway while a brown-haired visitor asks if Bella is home. Close-up of Keel's golden eyes as he inwardly complains that the visitor constantly comes by to talk to Bellatrix despite not being a student. The brown-haired boy offers a basket of flowers, explaining his mother wanted him to deliver them. Keel sharply notes that Bellatrix dislikes apologies, while the visitor reminds him she previously asked for baked goods.
The blue-haired woman is excited to have the items as a snack, though Keel flatly rejects the offer.
The brown-haired visitor rubs the back of his head with a wide, friendly smile. Close-up of Keel looking down with a shadowed expression.
A sudden, sharp clench sounding as Keel is visibly frustrated by Bellatrix introducing him to others as her little brother.
The massive white mansion stands amidst snowy trees bathed in a pinkish winter light.
A sudden, heavy boom sounding as the household staff gathers around an empty dining table, declaring they have a serious problem.
The blue-haired succubus is distressed that the young master barely ate half of his meal.
A large bear-like servant watches over Keel, who appears completely devoid of enthusiasm.
Jenkins and the black-haired man discuss how Keel seems even more frail than when he first arrived at the mansion. The blue-haired woman wonders aloud what the princess will say if the young master becomes sick.
A sudden cold shiver sounding as the staff collectively imagines a terrifying and wrathful version of Bellatrix.
The red-haired man suggests that someone needs to take responsibility and inform the princess of the situation.
A sudden, sharp snap sounding as the staff members play rock, paper, scissors to decide who must talk to Bellatrix.
The bear servant is horrified to realize he lost the game and fears he will be sliced in half. The blue-haired woman tries to encourage the bear servant, named Purr, by promising him a delicious rabbit if he fulfills his duty.
A sudden, soft sob sounding as Purr demands that they seal the promise with a formal vow.
A sudden, frantic scuffle sounding as the woman questions the need for a vow while the bear remains terrified.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as the duo is frozen by a sudden movement.
Keel stands alone in a high-ceilinged room, looking out a large window toward the horizon.
The grand mansion is illuminated by the soft light of a moonlit, starry night.
Bellatrix walks calmly through the quiet, ornate hallways of her home.
Bellatrix reflects on her successful business dealings involving love potions and the growing interest for mercenaries.
Close-up of the black-haired girl looking ahead with her vibrant red eyes.
Bellatrix peeks through an open door and spots Keel standing alone by the window.
Bellatrix calls out to ask what he's doing, and the blonde boy explains he was just stargazing.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as Bellatrix walks into the moonlit room to join him.
A bright constellation of stars glitters in the deep purple night sky. Bellatrix looks at the boy and remarks on the beauty of the Farigale. Keel turns toward her with a slight blush and quietly agrees. Bellatrix asks if he enjoys the stars, and Keel explains how their changing positions can serve as a calendar. Close-up of the boy's golden eye as he gazes at the night sky. Narrative text describes how looking at the sky once made him feel as though everything belonged to him. A bright shooting star streaks across the sky while narrative text mentions his past delusions. A sudden, joyful clap sounding as the two children prepare to make a wish together. Bellatrix smiles and tells the boy that any wish made on a falling star is destined to come true.
Keel looks out the window, quietly pondering the concept of making a wish.
A sudden, soft slide sounding as Bellatrix stands close to the pensive boy.
Bellatrix offers a comforting smile and promises that she will be the one to grant his wish.
A sudden warm glow sounding as Keel blushes and asks if she is truly willing to grant any wish.
Bellatrix boastfully claims that as the Animal Kingdom princess, she can get him anything, prompting Keel to reveal his desire.
A sudden soft touch sounding as the boy reaches out to gently hold the girl's hand.
The boy delivers his final request, asking the princess to take a solemn vow.
Keel looks down with a shadowed expression.
Bellatrix is surprised when Keel asks her to make a formal vow.
The black-haired girl asks how the boy knows about such serious oaths.
Keel explains he saw Purr and Ewer making an oath once and notes that in the Animal Kingdom, promises that must be kept require a vow.
Bellatrix's red eyes shimmer as she inwardly compares her vows to a contract with the devil, considering the gravity of the request.
The blonde boy looks up with wide, hopeful eyes and insists that he truly wants to go through with the vow.
Keel looks ahead and proposes that they modify the terms of their agreement instead.
Bellatrix promises that if he becomes emperor, she will grant any wish he has, and Keel firmly accepts the deal.
The girl reflects on how she might not be in this world when the time comes, but she views this promise as her final legacy.
A sudden, intense energy surges as Bellatrix officially declares her intention to take the vow.
Bellatrix formally begins the oath, swearing that when Keel Harryon Alicia ascends to the throne as emperor, she will be bound to his request.
Radiant light and magical symbols swirl around the black-haired girl as the heavy magic of the vow takes hold. Bellatrix lies amidst glowing petals and magic, vowing to grant any wish he desires, even if she is no longer there to see it through. A sudden, vibrant pulse of light glows from the girl's eye as the magical contract is permanently sealed. The scene shifts as a joyful shout sounding as Keel laughs and plays with other children.
Purr expresses relief that he doesn't have to face the princess's wrath, while the succubus mentions she already brought the rabbit reward. Jenkins remarks that royal bloodlines are impossible to hide, while Bellatrix asks him to explain what he means by that statement. Jenkins notes how remarkably smart Keel is, pointing out that while it once took him a month to finish a book, he now completes one in a single week. Bellatrix looks on from a distance as Keel trains with other students in the snowy courtyard. The black-haired girl is pleased to see how well the boy is getting along with others.
Bellatrix smiles warmly and reflects on how well Keel is growing up, feeling certain that he is in good hands.
Zanbar looks out over the snow and tells Bellatrix the empire Keel rules will be happy, though he privately grumbles about the delicious little monsters around him. The dark-haired man gazes up at the bright winter sky with a pensive expression. Bellatrix notes that natural behaviors of beasts and demons are distinct from those of a half-breed, mentioning that Jenkins shared a similar sentiment.
Bellatrix tells Zanbar that despite their constant bickering, he and Jenkins are actually similar in many ways.
A sudden, sharp shout sounding as Zanbar is visibly offended at being compared to the half-demon.
Bellatrix tells the man not to make a fuss over her abrupt comment while the succubus asks why she would think such a thing.
The succubus tells the princess that she clearly doesn't know the full history of what happened between Zanbar and Jenkins.
A sudden low whisper sounding as the succubus prepares to reveal secrets about Zanbar and Jenkins from back in the day.
A sudden deep roar sounding as Zanbar transforms into a massive glowing-eyed panther and lets out a pained cry.
Bellatrix remains unfazed by the transformation and tells Zanbar to move his paws as she continues to ask about the past.
The succubus gives a knowing look and suggests that Zanbar probably won't be able to talk about the past regardless. Keel asks what would happen if the others fell from the roof, but Jenkins reassures the young master that they are stronger than they look. A sudden comical squeak sounding as the characters react to the chaotic behavior of the mansion staff. Zanbar's panther face looms close with a vow to spill the beans before he dies, determined to speak before Bellatrix stops him. Keel notes that the others are beasts after all, and asks Jenkins if he can ever become as strong as them despite not being an animal. Jenkins tells the boy he might not match their raw strength but can beat them with strategy, reminding him that effort never betrays those who try. Keel smiles brightly and asks if Jenkins would like to go for another round of training. The blonde boy takes a moment to thoughtfully consider his progress.
Bellatrix looks over her ledgers and decides she can definitely charge more for her love potions.
The black-haired girl looks out the window and notes that rich nobles have everything, quietly admitting her own love for money.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as Bellatrix turns her attention toward the next task.
Narrative text notes that time has passed quickly and Keel is already 12 years old. Bellatrix watches from the window and reflects that while the boy is skilled in swordsmanship, she never expected him to grow so fast. A sudden, soft snap sounding as the girl begins to tie her long black hair back. Bellatrix finishes pulling her hair into a neat ponytail. Jenkins turns around in surprise and asks if they are really going to play with swords. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Bellatrix approaches and Jenkins attempts to lecture her on the complexities of swordsmanship. A sudden, firm grip sounding as the girl reaches down to pick up a wooden training sword. Bellatrix gives a confident, mischievous smile as she prepares to show off her own skills with the sword.
Bellatrix's hand grips the wooden training sword with firm resolve.
The group stands together in the wide, snowy courtyard of the mansion. Jenkins expresses surprise at her martial knowledge while Bellatrix confidently declares that the match should begin.
Bellatrix explains that she has practiced Taekwondo and Kendo for a decade as she prepares her stance.
A sudden sharp blur sounding as the black-haired girl makes a swift and powerful movement.
A close-up shot focuses on Bellatrix's vibrant, multicolored red and purple eye.
Bellatrix moves with practiced grace, her long black hair whipping through the air.
The princess maintains a calm and focused expression as she engages in the duel.
A sudden heavy clack sounding as the two wooden swords collide with great force.
A sudden sharp gasp sounding as Jenkins lets out a pained cry of surprise.
The red-haired man is visibly shocked as he asks the princess how she attained such skill. Chibi versions of the two characters continue their energetic and chaotic sparring match.
A sudden quick step sounding as Bellatrix calls out to the blonde boy standing nearby.
Bellatrix holds out the training sword, offering it to Keel for his turn.
A sudden, firm snap sounding as the boy reaches out to accept the wooden weapon.
Bellatrix tells Keel that he must press on and show more strength if he hopes to weigh.
Keel looks ahead with wide, determined golden eyes as he prepares for the challenge.
Narrative text describes Bellatrix's grim reflection on Keel's destiny to eventually kill her to reach his happy ending.
The sun shines brightly over the ornate and grand mansion on a clear day.
A sudden, joyful shout sounding as Bellatrix enthusiastically announces that it is finally time for their journey. Bellatrix tells Xanbar they must leave now to arrive by tonight and orders him to reserve an inn room.
A sudden, low growl sounding as Xanbar transforms into a panther and runs off after being sent away. A sudden, loud call sounding as the staff is instructed to quickly gather their luggage and come outside.
Jenkins and Keel report that they have handled all the packing and taking care of the extra bags.
A sudden, heavy stomp sounding as the bear servant cries out for the group to wait. Purr appears wearing a floral dress and holding suitcases, proudly claiming that he is also fully packed.
The group stands by the mansion entrance while Purr watches them from a distance. Purr responds with great excitement and joy when he is addressed by the princess.
A sudden, blunt statement sounding as Bellatrix informs the servant that bears are not allowed at festivals.
Purr breaks down in tears and begs the princess to transform him into a human so he can go.
The bear servant lies on the floor sobbing while Bellatrix questions why he chose to remain ignorant of his nature.
A sudden, soft whimper sounding as the bear remains behind on the floor in the empty hallway.
Glowing lights and stars illuminate the night sky above the bustling Dazer Region Festival.
Bellatrix questions if this is the best room available while Xanbar insists that a larger space is better.
The black-haired girl says Keel will have to sleep with her while the succubus offers for him to sleep in her bed too.
A sudden, chaotic shout sounding as the characters react to the succubus's playful and inappropriate suggestions.
A sudden, soft hum sounding as moonlight streams through the window of the quiet room.
Bellatrix turns to the boy and asks if he has ever attended a summer festival before.
The group lies in a row of beds while Keel admits he only knows the festival through songs. Close-up of Keel looking up with a thoughtful and inquisitive expression in the dark.
The blue-haired woman sings a soft melody about tying a red string at the end of summer. Jenkins continues the song with lyrics describing the blooming of flowers during the sky.
The succubus explains the legend of lovers tying red strings to ensure they bloom together as flowers after death.
Bellatrix sits up in bed and asks the woman when this war actually took place.
The blue-haired woman notes that the massive conflict occurred roughly 200 years in the past.
The succubus describes the Dragon War and playfully blames Jenkins for the demons being barred from the human world. Narrative text explains the legend of the ice dragon and the importance of cherishing time spent together.
The narrative notes that every city holds festivals as a final celebration before the autumn season arrives.
Bellatrix reflects on the need for bravery for the day when she and Keel must eventually say goodbye.
A sudden, loud laugh sounding as the black-haired princess looks on in complete bewilderment.
The blue-haired woman cheers with excitement while the princess clarifies that they are not seeking that kind of entertainment tonight.
A sudden, warm flush sounding as the blonde boy blushes intensely while the succubus teases his innocence, prompting Bellatrix to threaten to cut her tongue out.
Bright flowers and festive lights decorate the scene as the group prepares to reveal their coordinated festival attire.
Bellatrix and Keel pose together in matching blue and white sailor-style outfits, their contrasting styles described as a dark nightmare ocean meeting a bright afternoon sea.
Xanbar remarks that humans worry about trivial matters, while Jenkins mocks his lack of effort and questions if he is even wearing real clothes.
The blue-haired succubus appears in an elaborate jewel-encrusted pink outfit and insists that everyone must put in effort for the festival. A sudden, sharp snap sounding as the succubus shows off her revealing red dress and warns the others not to bother looking for her later that night.
Bellatrix raises her hand, showing off her black nail polish as she warns the group to keep a close eye out for pickpockets in the crowd.
Bellatrix leads the way with a joyful shout, running into the festival grounds as the rest of the group follows behind.
The princess and the young master enjoy the local cuisine, both munching on large skewers of grilled food.
A sudden, sharp bump sounding as the blonde boy is jolted forward after someone in the dense crowd accidentally knocks into him.
Bellatrix looks back with a startled expression as she realizes the boy has been separated from her by the throng of people.
A sudden, soft thud sounding as the person who bumped into the boy quickly offers an apology for the accidental collision.
A close-up of Bellatrice's vibrant red and purple eye reflects her concern as she notes how incredibly crowded the festival has become.
A silver-haired boy with bright blue eyes approaches the pair and kindly asks if they are doing all right after the incident.
Bellatrice politely declines help while privately reflecting that silver hair is incredibly rare, with the only other person she knows having it being Lady Shuria.
The silver-haired boy points toward Bellatrice's wrist, noting that something seems to be on her arm.
The boy offers a white handkerchief to Bellatrice just as Keel runs back to her side, calling out the princess's name.
Keel checks on the princess to ensure she is unharmed while she offers a small, grateful smile to the helpful stranger.
Bellatrice asks the silver-haired boy for his address so she can return the handkerchief after washing it, noting she will be at the festival until the final day.
A sudden, bright shimmer sounding as the boy reveals he is a performer and invites them to watch his show the following day.
A sudden, quick motion sounding as the boy points toward a grand stage with a piano and explains the performance will take place there at noon.
A sudden rhythmic tap sounding as the silver-haired boy walks away, noting that Bellatrice's little brother might find the show a bit boring.
Bellatrice waves goodbye while wondering what kind of performance it will be, hoping they might catch a glimpse of the rare Lady Shuria.
A sudden, sharp glare sounding as Keel looks away with a visibly annoyed and displeased expression.
A sudden, quick turn sounding as Keel flatly tells Bellatrice that he has no desire to be her little brother.
Bellatrice responds with a confused look and jokingly suggests that he can be her older brother instead.
A sudden, playful shout sounding as a chibi version of Bellatrice teases Keel by calling him Oppa and asking for ice cream. A sudden, soft reaching sounding as Keel looks back with a pensive expression, his mind still lingering on the princess's earlier comment.
Bellatrice offers her hand to the boy and asks if he would like to join her for a dance amidst the floral decorations.
A sudden melodic chime sounding as Keel accepts the offer and the two begin to move together through the festive atmosphere. The entire group walks together through the night festival, surrounded by glowing lights and various market stalls.
Bellatrix checks her surroundings and decides it is still far too early to end their night and head back inside.
The black-haired girl turns to the blonde boy and beckons him to come closer to her.
A sudden, confused blink sounding as Jenkins and Zanbar realize that both the princess and the young master have vanished from their sight.
Bellatrix leads Keel away through a quiet blue-tinted area of the festival, far from the prying eyes of their companions. The princess puts a finger to her lips and tells the boy that what he is about to see must remain an absolute secret between them. A sudden, soft sliding sounding as Keel asks if the glowing object she holds is a mirror, and she confirms it is her secret mirror.
A sudden, bright flash sounding as Bellatrice holds up her smartphone and instructs Keel to look directly into the camera lens. A sudden, quiet shush sounding as the girl smiles and reflects on how wonderful it is to capture a special memory like this together.
A close-up of Keel shows him with a gentle and genuinely happy smile as he processes the unique moment they just shared.
The scene shifts as the pair appears in elegant black formal outfits, receiving compliments on how well the dark color suits them both.
Chibi Bellatrice asks Keel if he wants to hang out again, but he gives a blunt and immediate rejection.
The succubus spots a sign for a stick of love game and excitedly notes that the winning team receives a pass to the hot springs. A sudden, energetic spin sounding as the blue-haired woman turns to Keel and asks if he would also like to visit the hot springs. Keel looks up with a determined expression and agrees to participate, admitting he has never had the chance to go to a hot spring before.
A sudden, firm grab sounding as Bellatrice's hand reaches out and takes hold of the boy's collar or shoulder.
A sudden pained click sounding as the princess physically restrains a very annoyed Keel, who lets out a frustrated sigh.
A sudden piercing scream sounding as the succubus tries to drag Jenkins and Zanbar along while the Panther Man insists that human games are a bore.
A sudden, piercing scream sounding as Ewer throws a massive tantrum on the floor while Bellatrice observes that she is being incredibly noisy.
Bellatrice agrees to follow the succubus's whims since she is their source of funding, prompting a joyful cheer from Ewer.
A sudden, rhythmic chime sounding as the clock strikes noon while the children wait, noting that the event might take a while to begin.
Bellatrix suggests they go watch the performance that the silver-haired boy mentioned the previous day.
The princess proposes a bet on the nature of the performance while Keel remains silent and deep in thought. Keel decides that whoever wins the bet should have a single wish granted by the loser. The pair arrives at a square where Juan Cruel plays a grand piano, reminding Bellatrix of how much she enjoys music.
Bellatrix smiles as she admits they both lost the bet, having incorrectly guessed the performance would involve unicycling or juggling.
The girl asks Keel if he likes piano players, and the boy admits they look cool.
Bellatrice's gaze softens with aesthetic appreciation.
Bellatrix turns to the boy with an encouraging grin and suggests that Keel should sing the song for them.
The princess leans in and whispers the lyrics of a song about blooming like a flower in the spring.
Keel repeats the poetic lines about falling asleep to the sound of a voice, his expression softening as he speaks.
Narrative text highlights that Keel will soon be 13 as the pair reflects on meeting again in their dreams.
The countdown to Keel's fate continues. Bellatrix pensively hopes she can still smile when she eventually sends Keel away to the Imperial Palace.
The silver-haired performer approaches the duo and kindly asks if they enjoyed his show or if they found it boring.
Bellatrix returns the boy's handkerchief, noting that while the performance wasn't exciting, it was deeply moving.
Juan inquires about their origins, and Bellatrix claims they traveled from near a place called Illinois.
The silver-haired boy asks for permission to visit them the next time he is traveling through their area.
Keel responds with a flat and jealous tone, informing the stranger that they already have a bear at home.
Juan laughs and invites the group to visit his home instead, offering a warm and friendly invitation. Keel begins to lead the princess away, pointedly mentioning that it is polite to introduce oneself before asking questions.
A sudden, graceful tap sounding as Juan places his hand on his chest with a polite and charming smile.
The performer reveals that his name is Juan Crumel. Bellatrix's mind races as she identifies him as a dangerous relative of Duke Cruel and a cousin to Sharia from the novel.
The princess observes Juan's harmless smile and wonders if his current nature is simply due to his young age.
Bellatrix introduces herself properly and gives the boy permission to address her as Bella.
Juan laughs and explains that showing his handkerchief to the guards will allow her to enter his estate.
The silver-haired boy expresses his hope to see the pair again someday as he takes his leave.
Keel questions the necessity of the visit, while Bellatrix admits her interest in meeting Juan's younger sister, Sharia.
Bellatrix leans toward the boy and warmly assures him that he is the most important person to her.
Chibi Bellatrix explains her little brother comment while Keel fumes about the stranger flirting with her.
Keel firmly states his actual age.
Keel displays a deeply flustered expression.
A sudden muffled snicker sounding as Bellatrix giggles at the boy's dramatic display of grumpiness.
The girl apologizes for teasing and asks the sulking Keel if he is truly angry with her.
Bellatrix playfully calls out to Keel.
Eeyore winks and shows off a bottle of juice, celebrating their third-place finish in the festival games.
The succubus asks about the master's mood, and Bellatrix reveals he is pouting because she called him cute.
Bellatrix promises the boy that there will be fireworks later to try and lift his spirits.
The girl mentions the tradition of writing wishes on lanterns to be released after the fireworks show. Bellatrix pulls the boy along by the hand, teasing him about how he looks when he is grumpy.
A sudden, intense flare sounding as Keel snaps back, telling her never to call him cute again, while Eeyore observes his sulky nature.
Eeyore looks on with a cheeky expression and wonders what she did to deserve such a reaction.
Jenkins stands elegantly in the background as Bellatrix drinks her prize juice and notices something is wrong.
Eeyore gleefully confesses that her prank caused Xanbar and Jenkins to end up kissing each other.
A sudden, chaotic spray sounding as Bellatrix spits her drink everywhere in absolute shock.
The succubus teases the princess for her ignorance, noting that even the young master noticed the tension between the men. Bellatrix laughs nervously as she realizes she has been completely oblivious to the relationship between her servants.
The blue-haired woman encourages Keel as he hides his face in deep frustration.
The town square glows peacefully under the deep blue night sky.
Bellatrix excitedly presents a lantern while Eeyore complains about the lackluster fireworks show. Bellatrix explains that releasing a lantern will make any written wish come true.
Eeyore gathers the entire group and suggests they all take turns sharing their wishes.
Jenkins writes down his wish to remain loyal to the princess, earning a tease from Eeyore.
Keel decides to write his wish privately while wondering about the shortened names the others used. Xanbar and Jenkins exchange thoughts as the boy focuses on his own lantern.
Jenkins holds the lantern and realizes they lack any way to light it.
Bellatrix offers to use her magic to ignite the lantern, much to Jenkins's concern.
A sudden, quiet snap sounding as the girl prepares to cast the spell.
A sudden, massive flare sounding as purple magic erupts from the girl's hand.
A sudden, piercing scream sounding as Xanbar is accidentally engulfed in the magic flames. A sudden, heavy splash sounding as Jenkins douses the fire and questions her magical training.
Numerous glowing lanterns drift toward the stars above the festive night.
The group gazes upward, mesmerized by the beautiful sight of the floating lights. Keel watches the princess with a soft and genuinely sincere expression. Bellatrix smiles brightly and expresses her hope that everyone's dreams will come true.
Months later, Jenkins questions Bellatrix's academic progress as she struggles with her studies. The girl reflects on how difficult it is to control magic within her human vessel.
A math problem featuring stick figures highlights the princess's intense academic frustration. Jenkins explains that defensive magic requires complex calculations and precise mana control.
Formulas swirl around Bellatrix, leading her to conclude that wizards must be eccentric.
A sudden soft creak sounding as Keel observes the stressful study session from the doorway.
Keel worries about the princess accepting the invitation to visit the cruel estate.
A sudden quick turn sounding as the boy walks away, determined to keep her home.
Keel contemplates the limitations of his current age and his future path as an emperor.
Eeyore greets the boy as he enters the room and asks if he wants tea.
A sudden light clink sounding as a cup of tea is placed on the table.
Keel asks about Bellatrix's potential fiancé, prompting a loud laugh from the succubus.
Keel insists on being taken seriously while Eeyore continues to find him adorable.
Eeyore looks on with a knowing and highly amused expression.
A sudden firm tap sounding as Eeyore points out that Bellatrix only sees him as a brother.
Eeyore suggests he uses looks to charm her, and Keel tries a bold expression.
Eeyore freezes in shock, deciding to ignore the boy's surprisingly intense and mature display.
Keel covers his ears and shouts that he is no longer listening to her advice.
A sudden, loud bang sounding as a door slams shut behind the departing boy.
Eeyore remains bewildered by the young master's dramatic and sudden reaction.
The winter landscape of the mansion is filled with Bellatrice's frustrated shouting.
Bellatrice collapses on her desk, lamenting her birthday month study schedule.
The girl asks Jenkins if there is a beach nearby for a quick escape. Jenkins stares blankly, caught off guard by the princess's sudden and random request. Bellatrice excitedly invites everyone to the beach, much to the confusion of her servant. The group sits in stunned silence as a large bear in a dress listens at the table.
Eeyore and Zambar quickly agree to join the trip, nodding their heads enthusiastically.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as the bear asks to go, but Bellatrice refuses.
The bear looks down with big tearful eyes after being excluded from the trap.
A sudden heavy thud sounding as the bear falls to the floor in a massive tantrum. Eeyore suggests changing the plan so that everyone can be included in the outing.
A sudden, gentle pull sounding as Keel reaches out and grabs Bellatrice's hand.
The blonde boy stares up with shimmering eyes, causing Bellatrice to inwardly groan at his repetitive displays of cuteness.
Bellatrice crosses her arms with a sigh, finally relenting to the boy's silent pleader.
A sudden, loud whoosh sounding as the cold wind whips through the snowy tree branches.
Bellatrice shivers in the snow, nervously worrying that she might actually freeze to death while they are camping.
The group prepares to set out across the vast white expanse of the winter mountains.
Bellatrice asks Keel if the temperature is too low for him, but the boy silently shakes his head in refusal.
The princess jokes with Purr, asking how long his fur would take to grow back if he were skinned.
The bear breaks into tears, complaining that the princess's suggestion is incredibly mean.
Bellatrice ignores the bear and pouts, insistently noting that Keel still looks cold.
A sudden firm squeeze sounding as Keel takes the princess's hand and softly calls her name.
A sudden high-pitched ringing sounding as Bellatrice's sense of reason flees at the sight of the boy's adorable face.
Narrative text describes how the boy's overwhelming cuteness is driving the princess to the point of madness.
Bellatrice smiles and pets the blonde boy's head amidst a backdrop of warm flowers and hearts.
Flowers bloom in the snow as the atmosphere becomes soft and romantic. Zanbar watches them with a skeptical expression, asking if they really plan to hike while clinging to each other.
Bellatrice agrees and orders the black-haired man to return to the mansion to fetch warmer clothes for Keel.
Zanbar looks annoyed and asks why he specifically has to be the one to go back.
A sudden icy draft sounding as Bellatrice's gaze turns cold and threatening.
Zanbar sweats under the pressure as a black cattail swishes behind him.
A sudden, rapid patter sounding as Zanbar transforms into a black cat and races back toward the palace.
Bellatrice reassures the boy that the servant will return soon with everything he needs to stay warm.
Keel watches her with a deep gaze, secretly wishing the servant would never come back and ruin their time. Narrative text highlights Keel's realization that his feelings for the princess are far from simple familial love.
Bellatrice cradles the boy's face in her hands, and he leans into her touch with a look of adoration.
Keel embraces the princess, thinking about how much he enjoys her hugs despite his dislike for being treated like a child.
A sudden, intense squeeze sounding as Keel holds her tight and wishes they could stay in this moment forever.
Eeyore and Jenkins sit on a nearby log, watching the couple's intimate display from a distance.
Eeyore asks when the men will finally make up, and the red-haired man asks who she is referring to.
The succubus brings up his kiss with Zanbar, wondering if it helped smooth things over between them.
Eeyore laughs and explains that a year feels like a single day to demons, unlike the perception of humans. The blue-haired woman predicts that the young master and the princess will settle their feelings much faster.
Jenkins continues to stare at the duo in the distance with a somber and thoughtful expression.
Keel repeats that he likes their current closeness, prompting Bellatrice to call him a rascal.
Jenkins suspects that the princess is merely using the boy's affection as a cover for a demonic invasion.
Eeyore looks over at the red-haired man with an amused and knowing glance. The succubus argues that both the princess and the young master possess genuine feelings for one another.
Jenkins points out that as a powerful demonic being, Bellatrice has no logical reason to act so human.
Eeyore insists that the princess is essentially like any other human despite her immense power.
The succubus tells Jenkins that his time in the human world was a waste if he hasn't learned to see the truth.
A sudden slight twitch sounding as Jenkins's brow furrows in response to Eeyore's blunt and provocative statement.
A sudden sharp spark sounding as the pair decides to bet on the outcome of the couple's relationship. Bellatrice notes from afar that the two servants sitting on the log seem to be getting along quite well.
The sky fills with the warm, golden hues of a winter sunset.
Sunlight bathes the snowy landscape as the day comes to an end. A sudden, quick point sounding as Bellatrice begins assigning camping tasks to her subordinates. A sudden, intense crackle sounding as a large campfire is built to provide warmth and light.
Bellatrice and Keel sit by the fire, with the princess suggesting they take a moment to rest. Keel smiles brightly as he enjoys the warmth of the fire and the princess's company.
Bellatrice looks at the boy with concern, asking him what she would do if he caught a cold.
The princess teases him for being a weakling, but Jenkins retorts that the boy is much stronger than he seems.
Jenkins questions if Bellatrice will take responsibility if the boy catches a cold, but Keel reassures them they will return soon.
Bellatrice turns away and prepares to carry out a task as the boy looks on.
A thought suggests the princess break ice on the lake, followed by a sudden, intense flare sounding from the distance. A sudden, loud crack sounding as Bellatrix marches across the frozen lake while Ewer follows with an amused giggle. Bellatrix pauses with a look of sudden anxiety, feeling a need to go check on the others.
Jenkins and Zanbar approach the princess, noting her obvious impatience with the current situation.
Bellatrix stares into the distance with a serious and contemplative expression.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as a voice calls out in confusion against the dark void. The blonde boy walks through the snowy woods alone under a soft golden light.
Keel reflects on his past wanderings in the mountains and how different his life is now that he has food and a home.
The princess stands before her loyal group of servants and the bear, who all watch her with warm expressions. Bellatrix smiles brightly at the boy as he thinks about how his name finally feels meaningful because of her. A sudden quick click sounding as the boy's heavy boots crunch into the snow.
Keel stands alone in a magical, sparkling environment, wondering if the princess would follow him back to the palace.
The blonde boy and the black-haired princess lock eyes in a moment of quiet understanding.
A sudden, firm snap sounding as the boy's hand tightly grips the golden ornament in his palm.
Keel looks ahead with a sharp and focused gaze, accepting whatever reversal of fate may come. The boy remembers the agony of losing his divine power and how close he came to death.
Keel remains determined to stand on his own 2 feet as soon as possible.
The boy vows to regain his status as royalty so that no one can look down on him and he can provide everything for Bella. A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Keel hears something in the woods while contemplating his future as an emperor. Keel calls out for the bear, but a sudden, eerie silence sounding as he realizes something else is lurking in the dark.
The boy's eyes widen in shock as a mysterious figure is reflected in his golden iris.
Bellatrix sits alone by the crackling fire, her thoughts troubled while the other men stand in the background.
The princess stares into the darkness, wondering if her concerns are merely the result of overthinking.
Jenkins suggests that the boy is old enough to handle himself and that the princess's overprotection might be a hindrance.
Zanbar nods in agreement, pointing out that Keel is more capable than he looks and Bellatrix should trust him more.
Bellatrix continues to worry despite her trust in the boy, her anxiety mounting as the fire flickers.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as the princess hears a noise and calls out for Keel in alarm.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as a wild bear carrying a stack of wood emerges from the shadows.
Bellatrix watches with a look of utter disbelief as the wild animal approaches their camp.
The princess looks confused and asks herself why a bear would be doing something so human.
Purr excitedly introduces the wild bear as his new friend, and Keel follows behind while carrying his own bundle of logs.
An annoyed Bellatrix sends her subordinates to deal with the new friend after they lectured her about being overprotective.
A sudden, loud splash sounding as Ewer happily prepares a meal by the edge of the lake.
A sudden hot sizzle sounding as the campfire cooks the evening meal for the hungry group.
Purr the bear sits alone in the dark, looking incredibly sad and dejected.
Bellatrix offers the bear some meat, but Purr is horrified at the thought of eating what he believes is his own kind.
The bear is relieved to learn that the food isn't actually bear meat, much to the princess's amusement. Purr happily devours his meal, even as the narrative notes that demons usually have no qualms about cannibalism.
A sudden soft flop sounding as the princess collapses on the ground, completely satisfied after eating.
Bellatrix smiles broadly with a look of pure, unadulterated happiness.
The girl looks up at the vast, star-filled sky while resting on the snow.
Bellatrix notes that the mountain air makes the stars look incredibly bright and numerous.
The princess invites the entire group to join her in stargazing now that dinner is over.
The group lies in the snow together, staring up at the beautiful winter constellations in peaceful silence. Bellatrix encourages everyone to enjoy the rare sight, and Keel watches her with a soft, affectionate smile.
Zanbar pipes up, noting that while the stars are nice, the moon in his home kingdom is much larger.
Ewer admits with a wistful look that she misses her friends from the demon world.
A sudden, sharp twitch sounding as Bellatrix's smile tightens while she mentally insults her eccentric companions.
Bellatrix lies in the snow as chibi versions of Purr and Ewer float around her.
Bellatrix stares up as the blonde boy asks when they are going back home. The princess realizes that Keel will be 14 soon. A sudden, soft blink sounding as Bellatrix stares blankly into the distance. The princess watches the boy, thinking about how little time is left before she has to send him away. A sudden, bright shimmer sounding as Keel gives her a sweet and gentle smile. Bellatrix's expression remains grim as she continues to contemplate their future. The princess finds some comfort in knowing they will at least be able to say goodbye in this life.
Sunlight shines over the lush green gardens of a beautiful, grand mansion.
Jenkins stands by the couch asking if the group will attend this year's summer festival.
The red-haired man explains that the festival will be grander than ever, surprising both Bellatrix and Keel. Bellatrix worries about running into Duke Cruel while a sudden quick tap sounding as her finger strikes a book.
Keel suggests they try going somewhere else since they've already visited that festival before.
Bellatrix questions his reluctance, noting that the fireworks show is supposed to be spectacular.
The boy secretly admits his dislike for the man who is currently pursuing the princess.
Bellatrix teases the blushing boy, asking if it wouldn't be fun to go again.
Jenkins interrupts the playful moment, calling out for the princess's attention.
The red-haired man mentions an interesting bit of news from a girl named Mary in swordsmanship class.
The village atmosphere has improved, leading the people to plan their own small summer festival.
Mary smiles brightly as she is invited over to the mansion to share the news firsthand.
The brown-haired girl explains the various household activities planned for the upcoming festival.
Bellatrix listens intently as Mary explains that the goal is to have everyone in the village participate.
Ewer eagerly suggests that the mansion should also do something fun for the occasion.
Narrative text highlights the lack of activities at the mansion and the need to do more than just attend.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Keel sits beside the princess on the couch.
The boy smiles to himself, seeing a perfect excuse to avoid the larger festival.
Bellatrix gives in to the boy's charm, agreeing to whatever he wants, while noting that his smile is essentially cheating.
The black-haired man suggests a circus, but Bellatrix immediately shuts down the idea.
A sudden, loud shout sounding as the princess rejects Ewer's cooking proposal and claims to have a better idea.
Bellatrix looks at her servant with curiosity, asking her to explain the plan.
A sudden, slow hum sounding as Ewer's mind works to come up with a brilliant suggestion.
A sudden, firm clap sounding as hands come together in a moment of inspiration.
Ewer excitedly proposes that they all put on a play together.
Bellatrix is stunned by the suggestion, unable to vent her frustrations in front of their guest.
Mary loves the idea, suggesting they use the fairy tales Keel previously told them.
A sudden, heavy sigh sounding as Bellatrix hides her face in her hands.
Ewer moves behind the boy with a look of quiet anticipation.
The succubus whispers to the startled young master that the play will be a lot of fun.
Keel looks surprised as he considers the implications of the servant's words. Ewer suggests that the boy play the role of the prince while the princess stays in her own character.
The blue-haired woman smiles mischievously, clearly enjoying the chaos she is creating.
A sudden hot flush sounding as Keel's face turns bright red at the suggestion.
A sudden intense flutter sounding as the boy's eyes widen with excitement and nerves.
A sudden quick gasp sounding as the boy prepares to speak his mind.
Keel stands up and declares his desire to put on a play.
Bellatrix is taken aback, looking at the boy with a confused expression.
Narrative text questions why the young prince would suddenly want to be in the spotlight.
Keel stares ahead with a determined gaze, repeating his wish to participate.
Bellatrix watches him with a look of pure shock and disbelief. A sudden tight grip sounding as the boy grabs the princess's sleeve and calls her name.
Keel grips the princess's sleeve with a sudden tight squeeze sounder.
Bellatrix agrees to the play as narrative text confirms it will be held at her mansion.
The selected story for their performance is Sleeping Beauty. A vision of the classic fairy tale princess appears amidst blooming pink roses.
Bellatrix takes the role of the sleeping princess while Keel is cast as her sager.
The young prince practices his swordsmanship while other students prepare to play the witch's minions. Roles are assigned to the household staff with Jenkins as the king and Ewer as the monologue-heavy queen.
The blue-haired woman directs the scene where the prince must finally rescue the princess.
Bellatrix lies down to rehearse her slumber while secretly wishing for real food or sleep.
The script details the prince's arrival at the highest tower to find his lady. The black-haired girl remains still, waiting for the next beat of the performance.
Keel approaches the stage with a sudden, steady step, sounding to announce his heroic arrival.
The narrative notes the boy's visible nervousness as he faces his lead actress.
A blushing Keel secretly wishes for a more professional cast to handle the romantic tension.
Bellatrix continues her performance while thinking about the boy's future effect on others.
The girl's eyes snap open as she realizes the implications of the upcoming scene. The boy leans in close to the princess with a sudden, soft rustle sounding. Keel abruptly pulls back and covers his mouth with a sudden, sharp top sounding.
Bellatrix calls for an end to the rehearsal, but Ewer insists they finish the scene. The blonde boy looks away, feeling the weight of the unfinished rehearsal.
A sudden, firm grip sounding as hands meet in a tense moment of practice.
Bellatrix watches the boy with a look of mounting concern. Keel remains silent, his expression reflecting a mix of determination and unease.
The princess prepares to address the lack of realism in their current script. A sudden magical shimmer sounding as their hands almost touch under a focused gaze.
The boy questions the girl's sudden desire to halt the practice.
Bellatrix argues that the instant marriage in the script lacks any sense of realism. Keel is surprised by her logic but remains determined to see the playthrough. With 3 days left until the festival, the group continues their rigorous training outdoors.
Wooden swords clash with a sudden sharp crack sounding as Keel focuses on his technique.
The boy catches his breath, finding the play's rehearsals far more exhausting than actual combat.
Jenkins watches the young master's training with a steady and observant gaze.
Zanbar stands ready as the boy pushes himself past his physical limits.
The red-haired man suggests a substitution so that the exhausted boy can recover. The black-haired man scoffs at the idea of exhaustion while acknowledging the boy's relentless effort. Jenkins worries about the heat as a sudden raspy cough sounding comes from the boy. 2 days before the event, Jenkins asks if the boy is falling out.
Keel tries to hide his symptoms, though his flushed face tells a different story.
Jenkins offers a medicinal herb brew to help restore the boy's waning vitamin. Narrative text explains that the herb boosts energy but can cause a fever if overused.
The boy remains focused on the festival, determined not to let sickness stop him.
A moment of quiet reflection as the deadline for the festival approaches. The day of the festival arrives with Bellatrix dressed in an elegant white gown.
The servants offer a mix of compliments and typical confusion over the princess's new look.
Bellatrix playfully reminds them of her status while gauging their genuine reactions.
The girl turns to Keel, seeking his specific opinion on her festival attire. Keel stands frozen and blushing, completely captivated by her radiant appearance. A sudden, soft touch sounding as the girl reaches out to feel his forehead.
Bellatrix exclaims in surprise at the intense heat radiating from the boy's face. Keel insists he is fine, blaming the perceived heat on the girl's cold hands. Bellatrix touches the blonde boy's face and notes he is burning up, to which Keel simply responds with a confused sound.
The blonde boy secretly notes that he can normally never get this close to her, but he cherishes these brief moments of intimacy.
Bellatrix informs Ewer that Keel has caught a cold, prompting the blue-haired servant to worry about the fate of their upcoming play.
Keel insists he will be fine and can perform, while the black-haired princess looks at him with mounting concern.
The princess dismisses his protest, firmly telling him that he is clearly sick and needs rest.
Keel argues that as the prince he must participate, while Bellatrix realizes she only has to lie down for the scene anyway.
The boy's strength leaves him as a sudden heavy thud sounding occurs when he collapses into the girl's arms. Bellatrix orders Zanbar to carry Keel to his room immediately while the boy remains unconscious. The group watches as a sudden, steady step sounding follows the black-haired man carrying the boy away. Narrative text explains that the young master hasn't rested properly between sparring and practice despite being told to take it easy.
Ewer mentions she had a feeling this would happen and added some herbs to the young master's meal this morning.
Jenkins asks what kind of herb was used as a sudden, sharp turn sounding occurs, and Ewer replies that it was sucrina.
The red-haired man reacts with visible shock, asking why she would add such a thing without notifying him first.
Ewer argues that a small amount shouldn't be a problem, while narrative text reveals she gave the young master a small dose as well.
Narrative text describes sucrina as a herb that restores vitality in small amounts but causes a fever if taken in large quantities.
Her hugs the sleeping boy, explaining that the princess asked her to keep him warm as a sudden, tight squeeze sounding occurs.
Seeing the boy is awake, the bear-like creature cheerfully announces she will go get a wet towel. A sudden, soft patter sounding as the creature walks away through the grand, sunlit hallway.
Keel wonders about the play's progress and worries that they might have replaced him with someone else to kiss the princess. A sudden, sharp thud sounding as the boy's eye reflects his inner fear that someone else might take his place.
Narrative text emphasizes the boy's inner desire to show the princess his true feelings.
A sudden, soft blink sounding as Bellatrix's surprised face appears in a memory like haze. The princess approaches the boy's bed and calls his name softly while standing by his side.
Bellatrix asks if he's in any pain while a sudden firm grip sounding as she takes his hand in hers. Keel feels a sense of relief and joy thinking that she came to be with him instead of attending the festival.
The boy begins to speak while narrative text highlights his growing affection for the princess.
Keel blushes deeply and looks her in the eyes, finally telling her that he likes her. A sudden, sharp thud sounding as the black-haired girl stands alone in the dark hallway after leaving the room. Bellatrix exhales in relief as a sudden, soft sigh sounding follows her thought that the encounter was a close call.
Bellatrix thinks that Pierre's timing was perfect for an intervention and is glad that Keel's fever has subsided.
The girl walks down the hall feeling bad that Keel is sick but secretly glad they didn't have to perform the play. A flashback shows the blonde boy in costume, with text noting that his lines were unexpectedly deep. A close-up of Keel's face shows his large, expressive eyes looking forward with newfound determination.
Bellatrix thinks that he sounded quite mature and worries that their future interactions will be difficult.
A sudden, soft tap sounding as the girl's decorated shoe comes to a halt on the floor. Narrative text notes that if Keel returns to the palace, he will soon be at the age where he can be crowned prince. A floating smartphone appears while text mentions Kim Hongyan and how the story follows its original plot regardless of personal will.
Bellatrix looks ahead with resolve, knowing she will eventually be summoned by the Demon King as an adult.
An ornate frame surrounds the text stating that the story actually begins at that future point.
The princess looks out a window, thinking about her return to the demon world and how hard it would be for Keel to live there.
A sudden, sharp thud sounding as text highlights that there is only 1 year left before Keel goes to the Imperial Palace. Bellatrix asks about the status of the play and why the swordsmanship students aren't showing up for class.
Ewer jokes that parents were shocked by Zanbar playing the princess, but Bellatrix suggests they should have made him look prettier.
A sudden, sharp thud sounding as the blue-haired girl calls the bandaged look a new fashion trend while the men ignore each other.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as hands reach for a book on a shelf in front of the red-haired man. A sudden, sharp thud sounding as Zanbar looks away with a slight bead of sweat on his face. The two men turn their backs to each other with a sudden, sharp swish sounder.
Ewer asks if the pair are giving each other the cold shoulder, while Bellatrix wonders if Zanbar is embarrassed by his princess role.
A sudden, sharp thud sounding as the princess wonders why the servants are laughing instead of working.
A sudden, happy shout sounding as Per announces that she is finished with her cleaning duties. Bellatrix praises Per for her hard work while enjoying the luxury of doing absolutely nothing.
Purr hugs Bellatrix, excitedly asking if she is now the princess's favorite.
The bear-like creature looks up with sparkling eyes, wondering if she is liked more than the young master.
Bellatrix stares back with a stunned and silent expression at the unexpected question.
The bear-like creature remains frozen in a silent and awkward embrace.
A close-up of Purr's wide-eyed and expectant face as she awaits an answer.
Narrative text asks if the creature would be the favorite if the boy weren't around.
Bellatrix reacts with annoyance, her expression darkening at the little bear's persistence.
A sudden firm squeeze sounding as Bellatrix threatens to kill every bear if Purr messes with Keel. The princess's eyes widen with a chilling intensity as she delivers her dark warning.
Bellatrix notices a familiar handkerchief around the creature's neck and asks why she's wearing it.
Purr happily explains that the young master gave it to her because it looked bower at her.
Bellatrix sighs in defeat, realizing that her demonic nature makes it impossible to truly reform.
Purr runs across the bright garden estate with a sudden, happy shout sounding.
The red-haired man explains to Bellatrix that Mary disappeared to join a mercenary group.
Narrative text notes Mary's talent and purpose, while a small illustration shows her determined face.
Bellatrix enjoys the quiet atmosphere as a sudden, soft breeze passes through the room.
The princess watches from the balcony as Purr invites the young master to play in the garden.
The red-haired girl comments on Bellatrix's extreme optimism while floral patterns bloom around them.
Bellatrix looks on with a somber resolve, mentioning she does not plan on living a long life.
A close-up of the girl's red eye as she accepts her role as the villainess Keel must kill. Wooden swords meet with a sudden, sharp crack sounding as Keel demonstrates his rapid learning.
Bellatrix observes the boy's progress, noting he'll thrive even without using divine power.
The princess prepares for another round, noting Keel is doing well in everything except one thing.
Bellatrix calls out to the blonde boy, asking how many times she has to repeat herself.
The girl explains that one who seeks life must risk their own and strike without mercy. Keel listens to the instruction with a nervous bead of sweat on his face.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Bellatrix stands in the sunlit training area.
A sudden sharp tap sounding as the princess prepares her stance in the grass.
A sudden quick step sounding as a foot plants firmly on the ground.
Bellatrix leaps into the air and orders Keel to rush her as if he intends to kill.
Keel looks up with wide, shimmering eyes as the training session reaches its peak.
A sudden, sharp crack sounding echoes through the lush estate grounds.
Their wooden swords lie crossed on the ground as Bellatrix catches her breath, remarking that the best defense is a good offense. Keel looks away while catching his breath, questioning why he would ever try to fight her.
Bellatrix mocks the boy's 9 lives like a cat, telling him he can spare one for her.
The blonde boy collapses into the grass with a sudden, heavy thud sounding. Bellatrix accuses him of changing the subject while he lies exhausted on the ground.
Keel looks up with a cheerful smile as a sudden, soft rustle sounding occurs in the grass.
The girl sits down in the grass as a sudden, soft flighter sounding accompanies their quiet moment.
A close-up of the boy's eye as a sudden, magical shimmer sounding fills the air.
Their hands rest close together in the grass under the warm evening sun.
Narrative text expresses a deep wish for their time together to last just a little longer.
Keel gazes up at Bellatrix with a look of pure adoration and surprise.
The boy rests his head on his hand with a sudden, soft rustle sounding.
Bellatrix laughs heartily as a sudden, happy shout sounding fills the tranquil garden.
A sudden soft touch sounding as the princess reaches out toward the boy.
Keel tells Bellatrix that she is beautiful while she looks back with a gentle smile.
Bellatrix plans to capture the murderer Calix so she can spend her time making memories with Keel.
A decorative frame identifies Calix as a wanted criminal.
Calix is identified as a wanted murderer, and narrative text warns that Keel could die before he ever reaches the Imperial Palace.
Narrative text reveals Keel is the Emperor's illegitimate child, unable to use magic like his family, which causes many to doubt his right to the throne.
An unseen person praises Keel for capturing the infamous Calix despite what others say.
2 men sit together on the ground, seemingly exhausted or defeated.
Keel attributes the capture of Calix to coincidence, but his companion insists it was his skill and that the people of Remengo are celebrating his accomplishment.
The blonde boy remains silent, holding his blue-gemmed pendant with a look of resentment.
Bellatrix stands in a sunlit study, recalling that the capture of the criminal was a key event in the original novel.
The black-haired girl reflects on the importance of Keel's growing fame following the capture of Calix.
Bellatrix recognizes Calix as a dangerous man that Keel almost died trying to catch in the original plot.
The girl clenches her fist as she realizes that completing this task is the final step in her plan.
Standing in the training yard, Bellatrix asks Keel if he will accompany her to Remengo.
Keel looks back at the princess with wide, curious eyes.
Bellatrix explains that there is something he must accomplish before he departs for the palace.
The 2 young companions stand facing each other amidst the quiet grounds. A close-up focuses on Keel's shimmering, gold-flecked eyes as he listens intently.
Bellatrix asks the boy what is on his mind while he remains deep in thought.
Keel looks up at the girl and asks what would happen if his fate could actually be changed.
Bellatrix remembers that her story about the goddess of fate was merely a fabrication.
The princess wonders if Keel still doubts his destiny as the crown prince, while a memory of a binding chain appears behind her face.
Keel reacts with shock, a sudden sharp thud sounding in his heart as he hears her firm words about fate.
Bellatrix informs the boy that messengers from the Imperial Palace will eventually come seeking him. The girl vows to ensure that his path to the throne is secured, no matter the cost.
Bellatrix offers a small, quiet smile while she looks at the blonde boy.
Narrative text reveals Bellatrix's fear that if the original story concludes, she will be trapped in the demon world forever.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as the girl maintains her steady, determined gaze.
Bellatrix smiles warmly amidst a backdrop of spring flowers, thinking that the time they spent together this season is enough.
The scene shifts to a charming, sun-drenched town street with half-timbered houses.
The group arrives in the town and notes that the atmosphere is different, hearing news of an upcoming spring flower festival.
Keel gazes at a white flower in his hand, looking pensive.
Chibi versions of the group explain the festival tradition of giving red flowers to women and white flowers to men.
A sudden soft blink sounding as Bellatrix looks around the bustling town square.
The blue-haired girl excitedly asks the princess if she wants to bet on who will receive the most flowers.
Bellatrix quickly declines the offer with a calm but firm expression.
The princess notices how mature Keel has become and realizes he understood her true objective before she even spoke.
Bellatrix shows the group a wanted poster for Calyx, ordering them not to engage him but to report back immediately if he is found.
The black-haired girl instructs the group to split up and avoid any distractions or games. Chibi heads of the red-haired woman and the dark-haired man acknowledge the princess's orders. Eeyore runs off with a sudden, quick step sounding, hoping that finding the target early will leave time for play.
Bellatrix turns to Keel and suggests that they begin their own search of the area.
The two walk together through the town, with Keel holding the flower and the wanted poster. Keel looks at his companion and calls her by her nickname Bulla. A sudden, firm squeeze sounding as the blonde boy takes the princess's hand in his own. The sounds of many voices fill the air as townspeople gather and talk in the streets.
Bellatrix thinks about their mission while Keel calls her name again in the crowded street.
The black-haired girl looks back in surprise at the boy's sudden question. Keel turns away slightly, seemingly focused on their surroundings.
Bellatrix watches him with a silent, questioning gaze. They arrive at a large, bustling square, which is the primary meeting place for locals. Bellatrix points out an ancient tailor shop that is famous for making high-quality belts.
The girl mentions a nearby bakery that is rumored to sell the best baguettes in the town. Keel suggests they try the famous milk tea nearby, while Bellatrix asks if he really remembers all these details from so long ago.
The blonde boy remains silent.
Bellatrix internally notes that her information only suggested the tea was acceptable, not exceptional. Keel asks the princess if they should pair some fresh baguettes with their drinks.
The boy tells his companion to wait by the fountain while he goes to purchase the snacks.
Keel stares ahead with focus. Sunset falls over the town.
A memory of two impoverished children huddling together in the dark flickers across his mind.
A close-up of golden eyes.
Narrative text reflects on the 10 years since his departure as a faint voice calls out for its father.
A cruel man rejects the young child, hurling insults at the boy's mother. The man continues his verbal abuse, labeling the child a worthless burden.
A sudden sharp slap sounding punctuates the man's demand that the boy earn his keep.
Memories of past trauma return. A sudden, soft gasp sounding as Keel snaps back to the puzzle.
Bellatrix returns with a bright smile, carrying a bag of warm bread and bottles of milk.
Keel smiles at the brack.
Sitting by the fountain, Bellatrix asks if the bread is warm, and Keel admits he prefers it that way.
A sudden, soft pause sounding as Keel calls her name while she's eating.
The blonde boy asks the princess if she would like to visit the place where he grew up.
Walking together through the streets.
A sudden, quick stop sounding as they reach a specific house, and Keel identifies it as his old home.
Bellatrix looks skeptical, noting the house appears occupied and questioning if they have the right address.
Keel looks at his home.
The princess recalls the history of the man Keel used to live with. A sudden, firm squeeze sounding. Narrative text describes the malnourished state of the 8-year-old Keel during his time in this town.
Bellatrix decides they should investigate inside, while narration mentions Keel's eventual sale to a wizard.
A sudden, low creak sounding as they step into the dark, cluttered interior of the dwelling. The black-haired girl observes that the house seems completely unfit for anyone to live in. Bellatrix glances back, her eyes narrowing as she senses a presence. A flashback shows a disheveled man drinking as Keel touches his pendant with a look of pure hatred.
Calyx stares with sunken eyes.
Keel stands tall in the doorway and greets the man as his uncle. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Calyx leans forward, expressing surprise that the boy survived his ordeal. Keel recounts the 10 years since he was abandoned during the autumn season. Bellatrix watches as Keel explains that he has finally found someone truly precious to him. The blonde boy looks at his uncle with a gaze hardened by years of suffering.
Calyx laughs at the boy.
The man breaks into a manic fit of laughter, his voice echoing through the derelict room. An overhead view shows the two companions standing before the laughing, broken man. Calyx smirks and remarks on how much the boy has grown since they last met.
A sudden sharp grab sounding as the man seizes a bottle, mocking Keel's new appearance as a refined nobleman.
A sudden magical flare sounding as Bellatrix moves to intercept an incoming threat.
A sudden sharp smash sounding as glass fragments explode through the air. A sudden soft landing sounding as Bellatrix catches the boy to protect him from the blast.
The princess looks down in concern, realizing that Keel has lost consciousness. Calix holds a jagged shard and mocks the girl's strength, while she demands to know how he can claim to be family.
Bellatrix expresses her disgust at a man who would consider selling his own flesh and blood.
Calix sneers and denies any connection to the boy, claiming he has no idea where the child originated.
A sudden, heavy stomp sounding as three sinister men emerge from the darkness. Bellatrix hides her face in distress, horrified by the overwhelming evil present in the room.
Calix grins with a wide, manic expression, his eyes filled with a terrifying madness.
Loitering amidst the gnarled trees, the shadowed figure of Calix mockingly asks if he truly seems human.
A close-up highlights the intense, glowing purple eyes of the black-haired girl. Bellatrix seizes an attacker's arm, a sudden, sharp snap sounding as she effortlessly subdues him.
The two gray-haired men recoil in shock, one of them brandishing a small blade with a trembling hand.
A hand tightly grips a gleaming white sword, ready for a decisive strike.
Bellatrix gasps as a sudden, sharp slice sounding whistles through the air before her.
A magical flare of energy tears through the group of men, sending them collapsing in a spray of blood.
Standing alone amidst the fallen bodies, the black-haired girl remains composed as dark magic swirls around her.
Calix stares in disbelief at the girl's strength while she coldly ponders the most fitting way to end him.
The princess points toward the criminal and demands that Calix be arrested immediately.
Calix points an accusatory finger back at Bellatrix, frantically labeling her a Deepening. The man desperately shouts for the girl to be arrested instead, but the princess remains completely unmoved.
A close-up focuses on the intricate floral patterns and dark lace of the girl's dress.
Back in the safety of the study, Keel notices a mark on his companion's hand and asks if she is all right.
Bellatrix takes the boy's hand and tells him it is a secret that she feels no pain at all.
Keel watches the girl with admiration, reflecting on how remarkably brave she is.
Narrative text appears over a tranquil beach scene, suggesting a new destination for their journey.
Bellatrix turns to the official and asks what specific punishment awaits Calix for his crimes.
Rohan, the high-ranking guard, stands with a stoic and pensive expression while considering the girl's question.
Rohan describes a brutal execution method while Keel tightly squeezes the girl's hand and distracts.
Bellatrix offers a gentle smile and expresses her gratitude to the boy for his constant support.
Keel looks down at the table, his gold-flecked eyes shimmering with a mix of complex emotions.
The princess praises Keel for his growth, remarking on the fine gentleman he has become.
Bellatrix holds the boy's hand and assures him that he is destined to find a happy ending.
The two young companions share a quiet, affectionate moment surrounded by blooming roses.
Rohan suddenly freezes as he catches sight of the blue-gemmed pendant Keel is wearing.
A sudden, firm step sounding startles Keel, who looks up in surprise at the guard's intense focus.
Rohan introduces himself and politely asks to examine the boy's pendant more closely.
The guard approaches the desk where the two children are sitting to get a better look.
An overhead view shows Rohan standing before the princess and the blonde boy at the study table. Rohan picks up the locket while Bellatrix realizes he is the Emperor's most trusted confidant.
A memory shows a woman carrying an infant as she flees from the imperial palace under the cover of night.
Narration explains that the illegitimate child was the only heir left after the crown prince's sudden death.
Narrative text reveals that the pendant was a unique gift from the Emperor that only Rohan could identify.
Rohan clicks the locket open to reveal a hidden slip of paper with the name Keel written hot.
The guard bows deeply and addresses the boy by his full royal name, Keel Harian Elysia.
Rohan formally proclaims that the boy is the true crown prince of the Elysian Empire.
The man acknowledges that this sudden revelation may be difficult for the boy to accept.
A close-up focuses on the elegant ribbon and brooch adorning the princess's chest.
Bellatrix realizes with a start that this event was supposed to happen much later in the original novel's timeline. The black-haired girl breaks into a cold sweat, worried about the consequences of changing the plot.
Narrative text asks if the plot has been fast-forwarded.
Rohan transitions to a more serious tone, stating he will get straight to the point of his orders.
The guard reveals the Emperor's ruthless command to eliminate everyone who has knowledge of Keel's past.
Rohan explains that the boy's history as a commoner could be used against him in the future.
Keel suddenly grabs the girl's hand and firmly commands the guard not to harm her.
The blonde boy remembers Rohan's cold efficiency 10 years ago, recalling the many lives lost to protect the secret.
Keel watches Bellatrix with a heavy heart, realizing her innate kindness makes her vulnerable to the cruelties of the world. A sudden firm squeeze sounding as Keel grips her hand, tormented by the fear that his own cursed fate will lead to her death.
The blonde boy calls her name, drawing her back from her quiet contemplation.
Sitting together in the dimly lit study, the two children share a moment of profound, unspoken connection. Keel silently resolves to work tirelessly to ensure that the princess never has to endure a moment of hardship.
A bittersweet smile touches the boy's lips as he begins to speak his final request.
He pleads for her to wait for him, the words hanging heavily in the quiet room.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Keel prepares a symbolic gesture to tether their futures together.
The boy gently cradles her face, promising that he will provide her with a life of comfort and happiness. The narrative text echoes his desperate plea for her to wait for the day they can be reunited.
A sudden soft sob sounding as Bellatrice's eyes fill with tears while Keel promises to always be waiting for her.
A sudden, firm hug sounding as the black-haired girl clings to him, her heart breaking at the thought of missing his growth. A vision of the future shows a grown Keel standing in a serene garden, reminiscing about the girl he once loved.
The adult prince looks on with a tender expression, wishing he could have shared every milestone of his life with her.
Bellatrice realizes that Keel has been quietly preparing himself for the pain of their eventual farewell. A sudden, tight squeeze sounding as the girl buries her face in his shoulder, unwilling to let go of their final moments.
Back in the study, they look at one another with a newfound depth of understanding and sorrow.
Keel asks with a faint smile if he will ever get to see her transform into a cat again. A sudden, bright laugh sounding as Bellatrice is charmed by the boy's unexpected question. The princess watches him with a gaze full of warmth, even as the shadow of their separation looms.
Bellatrice wonders if they will ever meet again, her heart heavy with the weight of her secret identity. Narrative text reveals the startling truth that she is destined to return to the demon world.
Rohan watches the children from a distance, his stoic expression masking his thoughts on their inevitable parting. A sudden, heavy step sounding as the guard prepares to escort them to their rest.
Rohan politely interrupts to suggest they retire for the evening as the hour pres late. Bellatrice laments that they never got to visit the beach together, especially with their bear companion, Purr.
Keel questions if a bear can actually swim, and Bellatrice playfully defends Purr's natural abilities. A sudden, soft chuckle sounding as the girl enjoys a brief moment of levity amidst the sadness. A pensive silence falls over Bellatrice as she stares into the distance, contemplating the boy's future as a ruler.
She assures Keel that despite the current difficulties, he is destined to become a great emperor.
The girl admits that simply being by his side has brought her a happiness she never expected to find.
Keel looks at her with wide, worried eyes, fearing that her words sound far too much like a final goodbye.
Bellatrice looks at him with a gentle, sad expression, unable to promise that their parting won't be permanent. A sudden, soft lean sounding as the princess rests her head on his shoulder, finding comfort in his presence. As the moonlight fills the room, she decides it is better to express her true feelings now than to live with regret.
The blonde boy watches her intently, hanging on her every word.
A sudden, quick rustle sounding as Keel pulls a spool of red thread from his clothing.
Bellatrice smiles and advises him to save that thread for the person he truly loves in the distant future.
A sudden, playful yelp sounding as the girl teases him, leaving the boy looking momentarily dejected.
She quickly clarifies that she does love him, though she admits her understanding of love is quite different. The scene focuses on the quiet study as the girl struggles to articulate her complex emotions.
Narrative text explains that the love she feels is a unique bond that transcends typical human understanding. A sudden, quick turn sounding as Bellatrice looks away, feeling sheepish about her lack of romantic knowledge. She explains that in the animal kingdom where she originated, the concept of love as he knows it doesn't exist.
Keel stares at her in stunned silence, processing the depth of her confession and her origins.
The princess reaches out her hand, the black polish on her nails catching the faint light of the room.
A sudden soft grab sounding as Keel takes her hand and begins to carefully wrap the red thread around her finger.
The boy smiles brightly, revealing that he has tied the other end of the red thread of fate to himself.
Keel expresses his sincere hope that when they eventually meet again, they will both be truly happy.
The two children sit together, their hands linked by a thin red thread, a silent promise to find each other again.
The two children sit together while reflecting on how they first met.
A sudden, loud clatter sounding as they prepare to part ways for the final time.
Keel looks back with a startled expression as the carriage begins to move.
A sudden rhythmic gallop sounding while the black-haired girl and Rohan walk through town.
Bellatrice offers a silent prayer for the blonde boy to find lasting happiness.
She watches the carriage depart while whispering a final farewell to her companion.
The carriage disappears into the distance down the quiet cobblestone street.
Bellatrice and Rohan stand alone in the middle of the empty town.
Rohan asks if she has finished saying her goodbyes to the young prince.
The girl questions why the guard is not accompanying the carriage.
Rohan explains that he still has unfinished business to attend to.
A close-up focuses on the guard's cold and determined blue eyes. Rohan asks if she feels slighted by the current turn of events.
The man offers his sincere thanks for her dedicated care of His Highness.
Rohan suggests that it would be best for her to relocate immediately.
Bellatrice stares at the official in a state of utter disbelief. A sudden metallic jingle sounding as a heavy bag of gold is presented.
Rohan admits that his request is based entirely on his own intuition. The guard warns that her presence will eventually become a poison to the prince. He questions whether she has the discretion to remain silent about their past. Rohan clarifies that he is not making a threat against her life.
The man presents a small vial containing a drug that erases memories.
The narrative text explains the liquid's power to make the past fade away. Rohan views her taking the medicine as a promise to stop interfering. Bellatrix accepts that this painful separation was always bound to happen.
Dark shadows stretch ominously across the floral patterns of the scenery.
A final message suggests that fate may bring them back together someday. Bellatrix throws a book in a fit of rage while cursing the guard. The girl scoffs at fate and resolves to reach the human realm again.
She tosses another book onto the growing pile on the study table. Bellatrix collapses onto the floor with a tired and frustrated sigh. A sudden rushing wind sounding as she complains about the lack of summoners.
Panels show the library as a mysterious and dangerous presence enters.
Bellatrix turns toward a sudden glowing flash to face an intruder.
A masked assassin prepared to strike draws his sharp dagger.
Bellatrix stands ready as her powerful purple magical energy begins to swirl.
A sudden, loud crash sounding as Zanbar bursts into the room in a panic.
The black-haired girl looks around and asks what has happened to her home. A sudden, rapid footsteps sounding on the floor as the conflict concludes.
Bellatrix and the red-haired man look up in surprise at a new arrival.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding amidst a room filled with defeated enemies.
The dark-skinned man asks if this carnage is what she meant by self-defense.
Bellatrix commands her companions to spare one intruder for interrogation.
A sudden, wet cough sounding from the wounded man on the floor. The girl grabs the intruder by his hair to force him to look at her.
Bellatrix demands to know who sent the group of killers to her home.
She orders Iwer to use her powers to induce hallucinations in the captive.
Iwer smiles and notes that a dream demon is perfect for this task.
A sudden sharp click sounding as the girl prepares to use her magic. Iwer leans in close to the assassin to begin invading his mind.
Bellatrix and Iwer interrogate an intruder as he reveals the involvement of the Imperial Palace.
Iwer expresses her shock and wonders how the Empire discovered their location.
The black-haired girl coldly demands that the captive reveal the names and affiliations of his co-conspirators.
The defeated assassin mumbles incoherently while Bellatrix looms over him. Bellatrix is startled to hear the names of characters who were originally destined to be Keel's loyal subordinates. Manifesting giant dark wings, she laments that her actions have drastically altered the original story's timeline.
Outside the study, Iwer and the bear companion Purr worry about their lady's well-being.
Chibi versions of the companions express concern that Bellatrix has not eaten anything. Purr wonders if she is pining for Keel, while a weeping Zanbar claims it is good riddance. Iwer tells Zanbar to stop crying and speak clearly.
The dark-skinned man insists his tears are actually just sweat.
A sudden, firm footstep sounding as a red-haired man enters the hall and questions their presence.
Zanbar points an accusing finger at the newcomer, criticizing his lack of human empathy.
The red-haired man reminds them of the original plan to raise the young prince as a future invader. He tells Iwer that he has won their bet, much to her confusion.
The man explains that they would never have let the prince leave if her theories were correct.
Iwer remains defiant and declares that the situation is far from over. A sudden, quick dash sounding as the blue-haired girl rushes into the study to check on Bellatrix. The group stops in their tracks, looking on with concern as they find their lady.
Bellatrix sits on the floor amidst a sea of open books in the library.
The black-haired girl looks up with wide, tired eyes. She realizes with a start that she's been studying until morning. A sudden rhythmic stride sounding as a guard leads a silver-haired youth through a grand estate. A sudden sharp clack sounding as a key is turned in a heavy stone door. The silver-haired boy explains that the prince must stay hidden due to constant assassination attempts.
A flashback shows the younger blonde boy looking on with a stoic expression.
A sudden tight clench sounding as the young boy grips his fist in determination. The young prince commands Bellatrix to bring him every resource he needs to master his studies.
Back in the present, Bellatrix sits at a massive dining table while Iwer serves a meal.
The girl reflects on the painful day she decided to send Keel away.
A sudden soft clink sounding as she stares at her food, wishing things were different.
Narrative text details her month-long effort to research how much her presence has altered history. Bellatrix admits that her very existence has changed too many things in the world. Iwer approaches the table to address her lady during the quiet breakfast.
The blue-haired maid asks where the young master has been sent.
Bellatrix freezes mid-motion, caught off guard by the question. The girl stares silently at her plate as the weight of the secret lingers.
A sudden soft sniffle sounding as Bellatrix blames her tears on the spicy food.
She tells the worried maid to forget about it and not to worry.
A sudden quick splash sounding as she continues to eat, accepting the inevitability of their situation. The girl remains hopeful that time will eventually heal the wounds of their parting. A sudden heavy step sounding months later as the silver-haired youth is led to a secret room.
He's confused to find the crown prince living in such a humble location.
The boy compares the grim, dark room to a prison hell. A sudden metallic jingle sounding as the final lock is opened for the visitor.
The silver-haired boy enters the room and offers his formal greetings to His Highness.
A slightly older Keel sits on a dark throne, looking cold and regal. A sudden sharp top sounding as the blonde boy commands his guest to sit.
The silver-haired youth realizes this is his brother and explains his long search harm.
The older brother offers to reveal Bellatrix's location to the brooding prince. The silver-haired boy looks on in shock and asks how things could possibly be settled so easily. The young blonde boy has a look of intense focus while resolving to find a way forward, even if he must deal with a cruel person.
His internal thoughts suggest that this is the only way to escape Rohan's watchful eyes, since Bellatrix only recognizes this specific contact.
A sudden, sharp slap sounding as a hand is placed firmly onto a sealed envelope on the table.
The young blonde boy stares ahead with glowing golden eyes and a determined expression. The silver-haired youth reports to the seated boy that his search came up empty and that no one was at the village location. Keel looks up with a defiant expression and refuses to believe the report.
A sudden rushing wind sounding as the silver-haired boy insists his investigation was thorough, while Keel remains certain the report is nonsense.
A sudden tight clench sounding as a fist hits the desk while Keel reflects on the reality that everyone in the palace is under surveillance.
The blonde boy stares forward with suspicion as he wonders if those around him are actively deceiving him.
Rohan stands before a view of the Grand Palace and coldly advises the boy to stop dwelling on his past.
A sudden, quick rustle sounding as Keel looks at the official in shock, wondering how they always seem to know his thoughts. A sudden, soft clink sounding as Rohan presents a small blue glass bottle and tells the boy to drink it for his own good.
The blonde boy looks down at the offered medicine with a stoic and silent gaze.
The dark-haired official looks down at the child with a calm and unreadable expression.
A sudden, radiant glow sounding as the liquid in the bottle catches the light while Rohan reaches out. A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as a hand is grabbed with force.
3 years later, Rohan enters a room carrying a massive stack of papers for His Highness to review.
A sudden quick breath sounding as the youth looks away from the window in silence.
A sudden, heavy exhale sounding as the older Keel stands by the window of his room, looking out with a somber expression.
The blonde youth looks back and commands his subordinate to bring the documents to him.
Bright sunlight illuminates a busy marketplace filled with colorful stalls and desert-style architecture.
A sudden, rhythmic crunch sounding on the sand while a narrative bubble explains that a massive battle took place in this area long ago.
The red-haired man holds a tiny teddy bear as the text explains how Pure has used magic to shrink and hide.
Zanbar listens as the red-haired man identifies the historical conflict as the famous War of the Sands.
Chibi versions of the companions bicker while Bellatrix dismisses the man's comments.
A sudden, quick dash sounding as a pair of feet in pink shoes rush forward and someone shouts for their lady.
A speech bubble appears above a crowd of people expressing how much they have missed her.
A sudden, loud cheer sounding as the blue-haired girl joyfully throws her arms wide during a reunion with Bellatrix.
Bellatrix pushes the girl's face away and questions who was the one who actually ran off to play earlier.
The black-haired girl looks on with an amused expression as Ira huffs in the corner of the frame.
Ira asks if they are finished shopping, and Bellatrix explains that she still needs to pick up some snacks.
A local merchant greets them warmly and invites them to look at the specialties of the region.
Bellatrix pauses at a vendor's stall and comments on a small cactus she finds cute.
A close-up focuses on a small cactus in a pot with a single pink flower, noting that these plants are a necessity in every local home. The merchant explains that while the plant is hard to grow, its blooming flower can grant a person's deepest longing.
A sudden rushing wind sounding as Bellatrix thinks of Keel and imagines the plant's power granting her wish.
The black-haired girl looks toward the distance and reflects on her own obsessive nature. A sudden, soft sigh sounding as she decides to take the cactus for herself.
A text bubble provides instructions on how to care for the plant by alternating between shade and sunlight.
A sudden quick grab sounding as a hand takes the small cactus from the merchant.
Bellatrix holds the potted plant in front of her while looking off to the side in vat. A sudden sharp whip sounding as she turns toward her companion and asks what the current year is.
The man confirms it is the year 1162, causing Bellatrix to realize that the original novel's plot is about to begin.
The red-haired man looks at her with a puzzled expression and asks what she means by her comment about time.
Delicate white floral patterns decorate a pale and ornate background. Bellatrix offers a small, knowing smile while looking down at the cactus in her hands.
The girl declares her decision that it is finally time for them to return to the Empire.
In a dimly lit room, Keel explains his plan to regain his magic by gathering sacred relics, while Rohan warns against taking unnecessary risks.
Rohan praises the prince's exceptional skill with a sword, but Keel remains frustrated by their lack of progress in finding the relics.
A sudden, soft sigh sounding as Keel reflects on his failed escape attempt while surrounded by imagery of dark roses and heavy chains.
Despite the increased security at the palace, the blonde youth expresses a deep and restless desire to see the mansion for himself.
Narrative text explains that memory-diluting drugs are often used to ease the pain of loss, blurring one's sense of time rather than erasing the past.
A sudden tight clench sounding as the young Keel struggles with the poisonous sensation of his precious memories slowly fading away.
A sudden rhythmic stride sounding as Keel walks through the vast ornate library and asks Rio if he has discovered any new leads. Looking weary and discouraged, the blonde man admits that despite his thorough investigation, he has found absolutely nothing.
The two companions discuss the impossible possibility of people traveling through time or appearing from a destroyed kingdom. Rio suggests that if such people exist in another world, it might naturally mean they exist in a completely different timeline.
Despite the unlikely nature of the theories, Keel remains determined to continue his search until he finds the truth.
A sudden sharp throb sounding as Keel groans in pain, clutching his head as he is overwhelmed by a sudden and intense headache.
Noticing the prince's distress, Rio urges him to take a rest while offering to take over the rest of the research himself.
A sudden rhythmic stride sounding as Keel retreats, thinking that forced recollection only worsens his pain while feeling relieved to have Rio's support.
A sudden, uneasy churn sounding as Keel wonders if his childhood memories and the girl named Bella were merely a figment of his imagination.
Warm sunlight filters into a quiet, lonely office where a massive, radiant white sword leans against a wooden desk.
A sudden, sharp halt sounding as the blonde youth stops in his tracks, his attention completely captured by the familiar weapon.
A close-up highlights the intricate cross-shaped hilt of the white sword as it sits peacefully in the morning light.
A sudden, heavy surge sounding as Keel looks at the sword with a pained expression, his eyes filled with a deep and unspoken longing.
A sudden light brush sounding as his fingers tentatively reach out to touch the cold metal of the sword's hilt.
A sudden, tight clench sounding as Keel drops to his knees and desperately hugs the large sword to his chest in a moment of grief.
A sudden, quick rustle sounding as a dark cat watches the grand palace from the safety of the shadows in a nearby tree.
The cat observes that the entire palace has been sealed away behind a powerful and impenetrable barrier of holy energy. Bellatrix reflects on her 3 years spent far from the Empire, waiting for the exact moment Keel finally discovers the sacred relics.
She worries that her earlier interference caused Keel to return to the palace too early, potentially disrupting his destined romance with Roseanne.
A sudden, quick whoosh sounding as the scene shifts to focus on the black-haired girl's internal conflict and shifting resolve.
A sudden, firm step sounding as Bellatrix decides she will do whatever she wants if the original story continues to unravel.
Lying on her bed in her private quarters, Bellatrix finds herself unable to focus on her mission while distracted by her smartphone. She attempts to reread the original novel one last time to ensure she is fully prepared for the events ahead.
A sudden, angry boil sounding as she becomes frustrated by the overly sweet interactions between Keel and Roseanne and the novel.
A sudden, sharp scream sounding as Bellatrix rages against the female lead's extreme kindness, wondering if she has a sister-in-law complex.
A sudden, soft thud sounding as the girl tosses her phone aside in a fit of jealous annoyance.
Narrative text details how Roseanne's innocent nature makes her a target for malice and constantly prone to falling into traps.
A sudden, sharp glint sounding as Bellatrix acknowledges that it was precisely this kindness that made Keel fall in love in the original story.
A sudden, soft exhale sounding as the black-haired girl tries to compose herself and manage her complicated feelings about the future.
She notes that Keel has not left the safety of the Imperial Palace for the past 6 months, complicating the timeline.
In the original story, Keel was supposed to rescue the pink-haired Roseanne after she was kidnapped by a group of bandits.
A sudden, sharp throb sounding as Bellatrix realizes she already killed those same bandits years ago, creating a massive problem for the plot.
Despite the changes she has caused, she accepts that some events are simply part of Keel's unavoidable and grand fate.
A sudden, sharp creak sounding as Bellatrix opens the door and commands her companions to prepare their weapons for the journey.
She decides to take matters into her own hands by kidnapping Roseanne herself to fix the broken timeline and clean up her mess.
Back in the palace, Rohan warns the prince that the continued delay of his succession ceremony is becoming a serious political issue.
A sudden, firm nod sounding as Keel agrees that gathering the relics is the most effective approach to take.
A sudden rhythmic salute sounding as Rein and Rio Froha are formally introduced as the prince's official escorts for the mission. Keel greets his old friends with a small, knowing smile, acknowledging that it has been a long time since they last met.
Rein is introduced as an elite magic user and the top graduate from the prestigious Alicia Magic Academy.
Rio is described as an exceptional healer and a trustworthy ally from Keel's life before his regression into the past.
A sudden, sharp glance sounding as Keel notices Rohan's presence and begins to feel a sense of lingering and deep suspicion.
He realizes that the current lineup of his subordinates is different, as a man named Peter has been replaced by Rohan.
A sudden, quick whirl sounding as Keel turns to Rohan and asks if he knows where the next relics might be hidden. The passage of time is shown through the ticking of 2 different clocks as the search for the sacred relics officially begins. Rohan notes that there is still one location that requires a thorough investigation.
He explains that the priests of the Haritia temple mysteriously vanished a decade ago during a mission.
Keel listens intently as the older man mentions the name of the temple.
A sudden, tight clench sounding as Keel thinks about how he had once hoped to visit that place with Bella.
The blonde prince sits in a moment of quiet and somber reflection.
A sudden, sharp top sounding as Rohan points to a map and suggests checking the Dragon's Valley for leads. The man decides that he will head to the nearby city of Dire to gather more clues himself.
Keel looks deeply troubled and conflicted by the mention of the city.
He recalls a cherished childhood memory of playing and laughing alongside a young Bellatrix.
A sudden, soft sigh sounding as the youth admits to himself how much he truly misses her.
Noticing his sudden distraction, Rohan calls out to check on the prince.
Keel remains lost in his thoughts, his hand resting near his face.
Amidst a background of delicate flowers, the blonde man declares that he will be the one to go to Dire. He stands with a look of firm and unwavering resolve. Keel decides that before anything else, he must pay a visit to the old mansion. Rohan agrees to handle the logistics and prepare for their departure the following morning.
A sudden rhythmic trot sounding as Keel and Rein ride their horses through the quiet forest. Using her magic, the blonde woman confirms that she does not sense any assassins or watchers nearby.
Keel acknowledges her report, though he wonders if he is simply becoming paranoid.
His companions encourage him to relax and enjoy the rare opportunity to be outside.
A sudden light chuckle sounding as the prince offers a small and relieved smile.
Looking back at his subordinates, he reiterates his determination to see the mansion.
In the beginning of March 1163, Bellatrice's group gathers in a lush and sun-drenched forest.
The black-haired girl asks her team if they remember how to operate the devices she gave them.
A close-up reveals a handheld communicator that Bellatrice designed to look like technology from her past life.
Ira praises the groundbreaking invention, while his dark-haired companion suggests that kidnapping would be a simpler solution.
Chibi versions of the girls scold the man for his ignorant and demonic way of thinking.
A sudden heavy sigh sounding as Bellatrice reflects on her slipping sense of morality and her past as a cop.
She points upward and declares that every difficult decision she makes is ultimately for Keel's sake.
She vows that Keel must never be allowed to discover that they even exist.
The rest of the group reacts with a mix of playful energy and supportive gestures.
Bellatrice feels frustrated by their lack of trust and assigns Ewer a particularly difficult and important mission.
Jen looks worried as he realizes the sheer weight and difficulty of the task he has been given.
The red-haired man looks at her in surprise and asks if she is truly choosing him for the job.
Bellatrice confirms his role with a steady and expectant gaze. She reflects on how she has successfully managed to prevent the summoning of the Demon King for the time being. A sudden soft throb sounding as she worries about how long her body will last and the regrets of not meeting Keel. A sudden sharp clap sounding as she resolves to focus entirely on the original storyline without making any more mistakes.
She points out to Peru that his fur dye has faded and commands him to redo it immediately.
Arriving at an inn called the Red Rose at night, Ryan questions the wisdom of staying in such an expensive place.
Keel insists on staying there despite the cost, much to the excitement of his blonde companion.
Ryan looks at him with a curious expression and asks if he already knows the establishment.
A sudden rhythmic stride sounding as Keel tells them he doesn't remember and leaves to take a walk alone. He reflects on the summer festival he attended with Bella and realizes this is the same inn where they stayed. A sudden sharp halt sounding as he reaches a bridge and remembers launching sky lanterns in that very spot. He offers a sad and wistful smile while thinking about the wish he made all those years ago. A tattered sky lantern shows a wish for meeting Shuria being replaced by a wish to stay with Bella forever.
A sudden quick scratch sounding as the young Keel determinedly writes his own wish on the paper.
He looks back on his childhood and wonders if that was a wish he was never supposed to make. The blonde prince gazes into the distance with eyes filled with a deep and quiet melancholy. In a cherished memory, a young Bellatrice tells a young Keel that he is destined to be the center of high society's attention one day. Now grown, the blonde prince looks out over the palace with a sad smile, reflecting on how he feels more like a victim of circumstances than a leader. Shifting to Bellatrice's location, a handheld communicator activates with a message confirming the group's arrival in the city of Dire.
Bellatrice holds the device with a look of focused determination and declares that it is finally time for their mission to begin.
The black-haired girl outlines the specific roles for her team, assigning Jen to tail the prince while Ewer spreads rumors about stolen relics.
Watching from a nearby rooftop, Jen uses his communicator to report that he has successfully tracked Keel's entry into the local inn. Bellatrice sends Ira off to fulfill her part of the plan and turns her attention back to the communicator to ask Jen for the name of the establishment.
A sudden tense silence sounding as the device remains quiet for several long moments.
Growing impatient, the black-haired girl repeats her question with a hint of concern, wondering if the connection has been lost. A voice finally responds, identifying the inn as the Red Rose and noting it is the same place she and Keel stayed during a past festival. Bellatrice listens to a voice from the past commenting on the prince's impressive growth and how he likely towers over her now. The blue-haired Iwer joins the conversation with a playful remark about Keel's height, causing Bellatrice to look visibly annoyed.
A sudden bright flare sounding as a complex magic circle begins to glow intensely on the forest floor. A sudden sharp thud sounding as a blue boot steps firmly into the center of the radiant magical energy.
Spreading her wings with a look of playful confidence, Urwer prepares herself for the task of manipulating the city's rumors.
Bellatrice fixes her companions with a cold and threatening gaze, warning them that they are strictly forbidden from approaching Keel.
Narrative text emphasizes the absolute necessity of following the original novel's plot without any further deviations. The following morning, Ira reports that the rumors have taken hold and the blonde prince is already making his way toward the bandit hideout. A voice over the communicator confirms that Keel's current combat skills are more than enough to handle the mercenaries guarding the location. Bellatrice commands her team to evacuate the area before they are discovered and checks to see if anyone requires assistance with their exit. A hand grips the communicator as a response comes through, indicating that the speaker will be fine on their own. The black-haired girl reflects on how everything is finally falling into place for Keel and Roseanne to meet exactly as the original story dictated.
A sudden quick rustle sounding as Bellatrix sinks into the tall grass, her eyes scanning the forest for any unexpected movement.
A sudden soft blur sounding as the girl remains perfectly still in her hiding spot.
A sudden sharp throb sounding as Bellatrix tightly grips her device, her mind racing with the potential consequences of any mistakes. Turning her focus to her companion, she stresses how critical the current moment is and commands the white creature to remain vigilant.
A sudden light buzz sounding from the communicator as it vibrates in the girl's hand.
Bellatrix asks the creature via the device if the pink-haired Roseanne has begun her destined action of peeking through the doorway.
A sudden quick whirl sounding as the bear-like Peru's wide, colorful eyes dart around the wooden room to assess the situation.
Inside the hideout, the kidnapped Roseanne and her companion are shown tied up while someone warns the girl of the surrounding danger.
Roseanne looks toward the door with a mix of hope and surprise, wondering if their long-awaited rescue has finally arrived.
A sudden light brush sounding as Peru tentatively extends a clawed paw toward the communicator lying on the dusty floor.
Bellatrix listens with a slight and satisfied smile, believing that the destined romance is about to unfold as planned.
Narrative text details how Roseanne is supposed to fall into Keel's arms and share a fated kiss the moment he opens the door. A sudden, sharp throb sounding as Bellatrix admits to herself that she needs to see this interaction confirmed before she can find peace.
A sudden, tight clench sounding as her fingers dig into the metal of the communicator in a moment of internal struggle.
She reminds herself that once this event concludes, she can retreat from the plot entirely until her own fated confrontation with Keel.
A sudden soft gasp sounding as the girl hears something through the device that completely shatters her expectations.
A sudden, sharp buzz sounding as static crackles through the communicator. Bellatrix shouts into the device with a look of pure shock and disbelief, demanding to know if the fated encounter truly took place.
She waits in a state of suspended animation, her eyes wide as she anticipates a response that could change everything.
A sudden, heavy surge sounding as the black-haired girl feels the weight of her potential failure crashing down on her.
Back at the hideout, Keel enters the room with a cold and indifferent expression while Peru watches from the shadows, questioning the outcome.
The blonde prince stands before the captives with a look of absolute detachment, while Peru's eyes reflect the pure terror of the situation. A sudden quick scratch sounding as the creature's claws scrape against the communicator in its frantic desperation. Bellatrix is left in a state of stunned silence, her mind struggling to process how the original story could have derailed so completely. A sudden rhythmic trot sounding as Peru flees the hideout at full speed, clutching the communicator while running through the lush forest.
The creature is overwhelmed by fear, recalling Bellatrix's threat of an unbearable punishment and realizing his life is in grave danger.
Narrative text reveals how excited Peru had been to finally receive an important mission directly from his princess.
The summary concludes by explaining how the creature was supposed to maintain a perfect disguise while acting as Bellatrix's eyes and ears.
The pink-haired Roseanne struggles against her bonds while hoping to catch a glimpse of her surroundings.
A sudden sharp shriek sounding as Peru observes that the captive girl has fallen over exactly as predicted.
Bellatrix's voice crackles over the communicator to ask if the creature has been embraced.
Peru clarifies that only a brief contact occurred while the blonde prince stands detached in the doorway.
The creature's claws scrape lightly against the dusty floor as it remains perfectly still. Keel maintains a cold and distant gaze as he looks into the dim room.
Peru sits motionless among the bookshelves, trying to blend in with the environment.
The blonde prince offers a sharp and sudden call into the silent space. Roseanne struggles desperately and demands to be released from her ropes. Keel stands at the entrance while the tied-up girl lies helpless on the wooden floor. Peru frantically insists over the device that nothing more than a quick brush took place.
Bellatrix's voice warns the creature to stay perfectly still as the prince approaches.
Sweating under the intense scrutiny, the white bear creature maintains its frozen pose. Keel observes that the fur color seems different but doubts the creature is actually his old companion. Roseanne shouts loudly for help, her voice filled with frustration at the prince's lack of action. The blonde prince remains unmoved and asks why he should bother releasing her. He suddenly stops in his tracks with a look of quiet realization. Roseanne begs to be untied while Keel notes to himself that she looks rather pitiful. The prince begins to walk away as the bear creature remains slumped on the floor. Peru's eyes widen in absolute shock as he realizes he has been spotted.
Bellatrix asks for confirmation of a kiss while Peru continues to deny it happened.
The brown-haired Ryan looks visibly nervous as she notices something strange. She points a trembling finger and exclaims that the bear creature just moved.
Keel turns back with a look of surprise and questions her claim. Ryan insists on what she saw and tells him to watch the creature's hands. Peru is caught completely off guard and realizes his cover has been blown.
The blonde prince recognizes the creature and calls out its name with authority. Peru desperately claims to be named Pudding before turning to flee at high speed. A sudden loud scream sounding as the two girls watch the talking bear run away.
Roseanne clings to the prince in terror and shouts that the bear is talking. Keel brushes the girl aside and tells her to get out of his way. He chases after the creature and demands to know why it is lying to him.
Peru panics as he hears the prince's voice getting closer and closer.
Keel runs through the hideout and commands the creature to stop and answer him.
The bear creature begs the young master to pretend he never saw anything.
Peru flees into the dense forest with the blonde prince hot on his heels.
The creature feels overwhelmed by the chase and begs the princess to save him. Bellatrice's voice offers to summon him back, a proposal that Peru accepts with relief.
She asks why he is running and panting so heavily through the woods.
Peru explains his desperate flight while the princess warns him about being caught by a hunter.
Narrative text questions the creature's motive for running away from his former companion.
Keel realizes with focused intensity that he finally has a lead on Bellatrice's current location.
The white bear creature suddenly stops in a clearing as the pursuit reaches its peak.
The prince understands that the creature is actively communicating with the girl he seeks.
Narrative text emphasizes his determination to catch up to the truth at any cost. A hand reaches out through the air, inches away from grabbing the elusive creature. Peru frantically begs to be summoned immediately as the prince closes the distance.
A sudden deep hum sounding as a radiant magic circle activates to whisk the bear away.
Keel stands alone in the forest, panting heavily as the magical energy fades away.
The blonde prince stares at the empty ground with a look of profound loss and confusion. A hand reaches out as the blonde prince questions why the creature is fleeing.
Bellatrice watches the forest and reflects on Keel finally meeting the pink-haired Roseanne.
A sudden sharp throb sounding as the black-haired girl questions why she feels so empty.
A sudden quick whirl sounding as the chibi-styled girl commands herself to focus only on the original plot. A sudden radiant hum sounding as Peru returns through a magic circle while Ewer and Bellatrice wait.
Peru frantically reports that the prince failed to even hug or kiss the destined heroine. A dark aura emanates from Bellatrice as she asks the creature if he was discovered.
A sudden soft blur sounding as the bear creature denies being caught, much to the girl's relief.
Pleased with his stealth, Bellatrice invites the creature to serve as her aide in the demon realm. She promises the white bear that he will become her closest confidant.
Ewer asks if the creature saw the prince closely, but Bellatrice immediately cuts her off.
A sudden quick rustle sounding as the blue-haired girl and the creature flinch at the command.
Bellatrice coldly declares that Keel is no longer their concern and forbids any further talk of him.
Peru looks on with a hesitant and disappointed expression.
Ewer offers a comforting pat to the creature's shoulder as they prepare to leave.
A sudden light brush sounding as Bellatrice clutches her chest with a look of lingering doubt.
A sudden soft blur sounding as a hand reaches out toward the fading light.
Bellatrice announces their departure to the demon realm while Keel collapses in the forest below.
A sudden heavy step sounding as the blonde prince begins walking through the dense woods.
Keel reflects on how Bellatrice must have been orchestrating every rumor and event he encountered.
Large black wings frame the prince as he processes the depth of the girl's involvement.
A sudden tight clench sounding as the boy's fingers dig into his own hand in frustration.
A sudden sharp throb sounding as Keel questions why he must pretend to be ignorant of her actions. He resolves to reach the mansion immediately to uncover the truth. A sudden steady trot sounding as the prince continues his journey through the clearing.
Roseanne and Ryan stand together near a wooden structure while two other girls approach.
Keel arrives and asks why the group hasn't left yet, prompting a nervous response from Ryan.
Roseanne watches the prince with a look of pure joy and admiration.
The blonde prince offers a cold and dismissive command for the pink-haired girl to move.
Keel instructs the brown-haired Ryan to keep Rohan occupied while he handles an urgent matter. Ryan asks how long the travel will take, noting she was too young to remember the distance.
Roseanne begs the prince to let her accompany him on his mission. A sudden heavy sigh sounding as Keel complains about having to carry even more baggage. A sudden light brush sounding as Roseanne clasps her hands together in a desperate plea. The pink-haired girl continues to beg with a look of intense longing.
Keel and Ryan stare in disbelief at the girl's sudden and dramatic shift in behavior.
A sudden quick whirl sounding as the prince notices something unexpected in the girl's gaze.
Roseanne looks upward with hope while Ryan covers her eyes in embarrassment.
Keel turns back with a look of quiet consideration. A sudden radiant glow sounding as Roseanne's eyes shine with excitement.
The blonde prince offers his hand with a charming and calculated smile.
Roseanne looks at the extended hand as if it were a dream come true.
A sudden soft brush sounding as their hands finally meet in the sunlight.
A sudden quick throb sounding as Roseanne reflects on how handsome the prince truly is.
Keel maintains his pleasant expression as he prepares his next move. The prince reflects that he can use the girl to trick Rohan and gain entry to the mansion.
Looking down from above, the group gathers to finalize their strategy.
Keel suggests they claim to have met at an inn and become friends by chance. He continues the lie, claiming he went to rescue her after she was taken by kidnappers.
Ryan listens with a skeptical look and asks if Rohan will actually believe such a story.
Keel notes that Rohan will appreciate the deception since it distances Bellatrice from any suspicion. The blonde prince orders a brief stay at the inn, a command the brown-haired Ryan immediately accepts.
Roseanne whispers to her companion that the blonde man seems quite unpleasant and cold.
Ryan feels a strange sense of familiarity as she continues to watch the departing prince.
The two girls watch Keel walk away as a somber atmosphere settles over the group.
The blonde prince walks with a look of focused intensity and quiet determination. A sudden rhythmic thud sounding as the carriage wheel rolls steadily over the dusty road.
The group arrives at the Grand Estate, a place defined by its lush gardens and ornate iron gates. Approaching the massive entrance, the pink-haired Roseanne asks with hesitation if they have arrived.
A chibi-styled Roseanne exclaims that the mansion looks like it could be a haunted house.
Keel commands the girls to stay behind as he approaches the main entrance alone.
A sudden, low creak sounding as the blonde prince peeks through the heavy wooden door.
Looking around the grand hall, Keel questions why the entire place feels so utterly deserted.
A sudden, frantic dash sounding as the prince runs through the corridors calling for Bellatrix.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as he rushes toward a set of closed ornate doors.
Keel bursts into the room with a look of pure desperation and wide-eyed shock.
Standing in a room filled with overturned furniture, the blonde prince wonders why the girl is missing.
He frantically searches the mansion, shouting for his companions but finding only silence in return.
A sudden, quick patter sounding as Keel continues his desperate search for the creature.
The blonde prince rushes into another vacant room while calling out for the blue-haired girl. Panting heavily, Keel is overwhelmed by a sense of dread as he realizes no one is there.
A sudden, sharp whirl sounding as he turns back toward the empty and silent hallway.
A sudden, steady step sounding as someone walks down the desolate corridor.
The scene shifts toward another set of ornate, closed double doors.
A sudden, slow creak sounding as Keel enters a quiet bedroom with a look of trepidation.
The luxurious bedroom stands empty and silent under the soft, glowing light.
A sudden, hollow step sounding as the prince walks toward the center of the room.
Keel's heavy cloak drags across the floor as he slows his pace in the empty space.
Sitting on the edge of the bed, the blonde prince offers a hollow and bitter laugh. Dark, thorny shadows loom over Keel, whispering that he is destined to be abandoned by everyone he knows.
A dark presence taunts the prince about his past, claiming he is fundamentally unwanted and alone.
A sudden, piercing scream sounding as Keel wakes from his nightmare in a cold sweat.
A sudden, quick whirl sounding as the prince looks around the room in a state of panic. A vision of a happier past with Bellatrix flickers through his mind like a beautiful dream.
The dark aura remains as Keel desperately denies the voice's claim that he is truly solitary.
Red energy pulses through the air as the prince's mental struggle reaches its peak.
A sudden, loud shout sounding as Keel rejects the shadows with a defiant and angry cry. Taking a deep breath, he tries to convince himself that there must be a reason for everything. Keel reflects on Bellatrix's smile, hoping her departure and the creature's flight are part of a plan.
The blonde prince decides that his next step must be to search the study for any clues.
A sudden, light creak sounding as Keel enters the library filled with dust-covered bookshelves. He stares in disbelief as he realizes there is no way he could have missed this clue.
A sudden, steady step sounding as Keel approaches a hidden corner of the room.
An old iron safe stands tucked away among the shadows of the silent study.
The prince stands before the heavy vault, ready to uncover whatever secrets it may hold. Examining the worn combination lock, Keel notes that only certain numbers seem to be frequently used.
A sudden, sharp click sounding as he attempts to dial a new sequence into the device.
Keel pauses in thought while continuing to manipulate the mechanical lock on the safe.
A sudden, heavy clunk sounding as the safe finally opens after he enters the correct digits.
Holding a tattered paper, Keel discovers a mysterious sketch and cryptic medical notes inside the vault.
Standing in the quiet library, Keel examines a document and identifies it as a land deed. A yellow sticky note identifies the paper as a gift for Keel's 15th birthday.
The blonde prince looks down with a curious expression as he discovers more secrets in the vault.
Medical notes reveal that the mage who abused Keel is dead, while a relic grants him new swordsmanship.
Keel learns his palace entry has been advanced and expresses shock at the report of Peter's death.
A sudden, sharp throb sounding as a lingering memory flickers within the boy's mind.
In the vision, the blue-haired boy explains that no one has lived in the village from the start.
A sudden, heavy step sounding as Keel turns and prepares to leave the desolate library.
A sudden, soft blur sounding as a vision of Roseanne and Rein appears within the light. The pink-haired girl looks forward with a cheerful and hopeful expression.
Keel commands the others to stay behind while he searches for the blue-haired girl.
A sudden, happy hop sounding as the chibi bear creature dances through a field of stars.
Peru greets the group while Bellatrix and her companions prepare to enter the portal. The black-haired girl looks away in silence while the tan-skinned sandbar watches her.
A sudden, radiant hum sounding as Bellatrix commands everyone to head into the massive magic circle.
Peru leaps through the gateway as the group begins their departure from the human world.
The black-haired girl looks back with a sense of quiet and focused determination.
Iwer and the red-haired man are interrupted by someone asking what they are doing. The red-haired man mentions a bet while Iwer suggests staying behind to help the lady with her furniture.
Bellatrix responds to her companions with a bright and genuinely happy smile.
The red-haired man tells the girl to stop worrying and join them in the journey.
He admits he is still afraid but insists on staying to do something useful for his lady. The red-haired man notes they must understand human affairs before invading their realm. Bellatrix wonders if they still believe her lie about invading the human realm. Fearing the demons might try to kill Keel, she gives them a radio to continue their facade. Chibi Bellatrix forbids the duo from approaching Keel, a command they immediately accept.
A sudden, sharp flash sounding as the girl prepares to bind them with an oath of obedience.
Iwer and the red-haired man receive the magical seal as the girl mentions the prince.
Xanbar listens as the others argue about whether the lady truly trusts them.
Bellatrix turns toward the black-haired man and asks why he hasn't left yet.
The black-haired girl repeats her question with a look of mild annoyance. A sudden, quick flinch sounding as the girl notes the man's hatred for the human realm.
Xanbar looks away with a troubled and conflicted expression.
A sudden, light brush sounding as the rest of the group disappears into the portal.
The red-haired man looks back one last time with a somber and lingering gaze.
Xanbar finally agrees to go and begins walking toward the glowing gateway. Bellatrix commands the man to hurry up because her legs are beginning to ache.
A sudden, sharp snap sounding as the girl offers a smug and calculated smile.
Chibi Xanbar begs the girl not to crumple him while the others watch the comedic exchange.
A sudden, soft blur sounding as Bellatrix gazes up at the fading light of the sky.
The girl reflects that this is the last sunset she will see in the human realm.
A sudden, heavy step sounding as she enters a grand room filled with a strange stench.
Bellatrix looks forward in wide-eyed shock at the scene unfolding before her.
A sudden, loud shout sounding as Prue's massive bear form greets the startled princess.
Sitting on the floor, the girl realizes she hasn't seen the bear's true form in ages.
Prue excitedly announces that the demons have prepared a special party for her arrival.
A sudden quick whirl sounding as Bellatrix questions the nature of the festivities.
The gruesome party features a skeleton pyramid, human-shaved ice, and a bug circus.
A sudden, weary sigh sounding as the girl declares the entire display to be insane.
A sudden, sharp top sounding as a spindly clawed limb steps onto the carpeted floor.
The large cockroach demon named Talum welcomes the princess.
Bellatrix thinks about her intense hatred for cockroaches. Small cockroach demons offer the princess gifts of meat. Bellatrix offers a strained and awkward laugh.
The cockroach demons blush with joy at her laughter. Peru looks on nervously beside the distressed princess.
Bellatrix commands everyone to be quiet and leave. A hooded figure walks through a quiet town.
The blonde prince looks around the street with focus.
Keel stands alone in the middle of Tom.
He notes that Mary joined a mercenary group.
A sudden, soft knock sounding as Keel visits Bruin.
The purple-haired Bruin asks who is at the door.
Bruin gasps in shock at seeing the visitor. The blonde prince asks where Bella has gone. Bruin hesitantly explains that the lady has already left.
Keel immediately demands to know her current location.
A sudden, sharp tap sounding as Bruin looks aware.
Bruin admits that the townspeople are also Manamber.
He explains that silence was bought regarding the mansion. Bruin notes that they only heard rumors of murder. Keel wonders if his acquaintances were targeted for knowing him. He questions if she fled from overwhelming pressure.
Bellatrix sits on her throne feeling completely insane.
She reflects on how Xanbar and Peru changed.
Bellatrix recalls her hope to reform the demon realm. She established rules against killing and unnecessary bloodshed.
The princess despairs, realizing her efforts were totally useless. Mocking, smiling masks surround the dejected black-haired girl.
A sudden, sharp shriek sounding as she covers her face. Crow-like creatures caw while the girl remains slumped.
A sudden loud bang sounding as she scolds bird-like demons. The bird demons invite her to join their campfire. A sudden, sharp scream sounding as she pulls her hair. A group of masked demons approaches the princess. The masked demons present her with another unwanted gift. A sudden, loud shout sounding as she rejects them. A sudden, bright flash sounding as Bellatrix uses magic. Purple energy strikes the demons as they groan. She expresses disgust at the demon's regenerative abilities.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as she stands alone.
The princess pants while looking completely exhausted. She reflects that neither decoration nor kindness has worked.
Bellatrix wonders how much time she has lost here.
The girl decides she cannot continue living this way. She stands in silence with her face in her hands.
Bellatrix contemplates whether she should choose to die.
She considers that death might be easier than her life.
The black-haired girl resolves to keep her second life. A sudden, firm grab sounding as she reaches for her phone.
Bellatrix notes she has only one chance to submit an inquiry.
She confirms she found the frequently asked questions. The black-haired girl questions if anyone else wants to die from exhaustion. Bellatrix finds what she was looking for on the device. Chibi Bellatrix mocks the claim that reincarnation is a precious experience.
She notices an additional answer provided on the screen.
The rules state that suicide and self-harm are strictly forbidden during possession.
Bellatrix scoffs at the idea of finding true happiness.
Collapsing on the bed, she despairs over her fate as the Demon King.
The black-haired girl wonders who would go through the trouble of summoning her.
Bellatrix looks at her phone as a memory reflects in her eye.
A childhood photograph shows Bellatrix and Keel smiling together. She looks at Keel's picture with a soft and fond expression. A sudden, firm grab sounding as she resolves to die for Keel's sake.
Bellatrix hopes to hear his voice as she drifts off to sleep.
A sudden, loud bark sounding near the girl's ear.
Bellatrix is startled awake by the persistent noise. A sudden, sharp tap sounding as she screams for the dogs to be quiet.
The wolf-headed demons correct her, saying they are wolves, not dogs. Bellatrix uses her magic to silence the annoying intruders.
She watches the scene with a cold and glowing gaze.
A sudden, radiant hum sounding as a moon-like object glows.
Bellatrix stands alone outside, finally enjoying the silence.
The black-haired girl smiles wickedly, deciding to kill everyone else instead.
2 years pass as the scene shifts to a moonlit TAFE. A sudden, heavy step sounding as someone approaches a stone pedestal. A hand reaches into a chest to retrieve a glowing blue cup.
Keel examines the chalice and confirms his expectations.
Roseanne asks if he successfully recovered the Holy Grail.
The blonde prince identifies the item as the final relic.
Roseanne watches in silence as they prepare to leave.
The pink-haired girl wonders if their long journey is finally over. Keel turns away and begins walking out of the cavern.
A sudden, loud shout sounding as Roseanne begs him to take her along.
Night falls over a quiet campsite in the forest.
The blonde woman in the ponytail greets the returning duo.
She asks what Keel is holding in his hand. A sudden, quick toss sounding as she catches the blue relic.
The blonde woman is shocked he found the grail so quickly.
Keel heads toward his tent to get some rest.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as she wonders about his tracking abilities.
The blonde prince enters his private quarters and removes his cloak.
Keel notes that events are unfolding exactly as written in the novel.
He sits down to examine a mysterious magical tome.
Keel reflects on how Bellatrix's notes guided their fast progress.
The prince wonders why Roseanne keeps appearing, just as in the book.
A sudden, sharp scratch sounding as he crossed out text in the book.
Keel drops his pen onto the wooden desk.
He leans back with an exhausted and troubled expression. The blonde prince questions the true origin of the book.
The blonde prince reflects on whether the black-haired girl truly came from the future.
A sudden, sharp snap sounding as Keel closes his book while realizing she is absent from the novel.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as he admits his memory of the girl is starting to fade.
The blonde prince reflects on his deep desire to never forget the lady.
A sudden, weary sigh sounding as Keel sits alone, lost in his troubled thoughts.
Keel longingly thinks about falling asleep to the soothing sound of her voice. He wonders if a lullaby might grant him the chance to see her in his dreams.
A sudden, light rustle sounding as the fluttering pages of the book echo his plea for her to stay.
Roseanne stands alone in the night, reflecting on how their long journey is nearing its end.
The pink-haired girl recalls her stubborn insistence on traveling to see the wider world.
She remembers the joyful time spent sharing stories and laughter by the campfire.
Roseanne reflects on how grateful she felt for the shared moments and guidance during their travels.
A sudden, quick brush sounding as she notes how fleeting and precious those happy times were.
The pink-haired girl admits that her heart was slowly and inevitably drawn toward the blonde prince.
Despite his cold and heartless exterior, Roseanne reflects on the small, quiet gestures of kindness Keel showed. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as she notes her heart falling for him with the force of gravity. A sudden, weary sigh sounding as the pink-haired girl laments her unrequited feelings and quiet suffering.
A sudden firm grab sounding as the brown-haired Mayu prepares to take a bold step.
The maid approaches the pink-haired girl to get her attention.
A sudden soft glow sounding as Mayu offers her lady a mysterious shimmering purple bottle.
Roseanne questions the nature of the strange gift being presented to her.
A sudden heavy gulp sounding as Mayu explains the item is a perfume intended to provide courage. A sudden firm grab sounding as the maid demands that Roseanne use the scent to confess to Keel. Roseanne refuses, arguing that a confession aided by a magical perfume wouldn't be genuine. Mayu insists that this is the final opportunity for her lady to speak her heart. A tense and heavy silence falls between the two women as they weigh the consequences. A sudden, loud splash sounding as Mayu sprays the elixir directly onto the startled girl.
The brown-haired maid locked Roseanne inside the tent, declaring that she won't be released until she confesses.
A sudden, strained groan sounding as Roseanne finds herself trapped and unable to overpower the determined maid. A sudden, quick whirl sounding as the girl turns around to face the interior of the tent. A sudden, heavy step sounding as Roseanne notices that Keel has fallen asleep at his desk. A sudden, heavy step sounding as she realizes the blonde prince is struggling through a nightmare.
A sudden soft brush sounding as the pink-haired girl reaches out to Weakham.
Roseanne is startled when the prince begins to mumble a fragment of an unfamiliar name. A faint memory of the black-haired Bellatrix flickers as the prince continues to dream.
Keel sleepily calls out the name of the woman he truly misses.
A sudden fast thump sounding as Roseanne witnesses a gentle expression she has never seen before. A sudden fast thump sounding as Keel pulls the blushing girl into a sudden close embrace.
The two share a quiet and intimate moment in the dim light of the tent.
A sudden bright flare sounding as the flickering candle flame illuminates their silhouettes.
A credits page provides details about the team that worked on this chapter of the story. A sudden bright flare sounding as Keel wakes and immediately questions the source of her scent.
A sudden heavy thud sounding as the prince moves quickly to confront the maid.
A sudden sharp gasp sounding as Mayu is startled by the prince's sudden and intense interest.
Keel demands to know exactly where the maid acquired the so-called perfume.
Roseanne watches in confusion, wondering why the elixir didn't produce the romantic results she expected.
The pink-haired girl feels the genuine effects of the potion as her heart races with affection.
A sudden heavy step sounding as the blonde prince continues to press the maid for answers.
Keel looks determined and certain as he reflects on the familiar scent he has recognized.
The prince realizes with shock that the perfume carries the distinct smell of the demon's blood.
The blonde prince smiles with gentle eyes. Dark bloodstains cover the ornate pattern floor.
Zanbar warns the princess that killing demons only makes their units grow larger through rapid reproduction.
Bellatrix suggests total annihilation, which the bull-headed demon views as a sign of a magnificent demon king.
Complaining about the overwhelming smell of blood, the princess orders the demons to clean the floor with water.
Zanbar reflects on the unit's consistent performance.
Bellatrix suggests that if everyone else dies, the bull-headed demon will naturally be the best.
The demon smiles at her twisted logic. A sudden, loud shout sounding as Puru, the teddy bear servant, announces that Ewer sent some new clothes.
The girl's eyes glow with magic.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Bellatrix stares at her blood-stained hands and ruined dress.
She wonders if she lost control again.
A sudden, light rustle sounding as she returns to her bedroom filled with unopened gifts.
The black-haired girl notes how long it has been since she entered her room.
Puru cheers in a greeting retire.
She is caught by a sudden surprise. Bellatrix is struck by the bright and warm appearance of the beautiful dress.
The princess turns away from the finery.
A sudden, loud splash sounding as she washes the blood away in a large bathtub.
Bellatrix reflects on how demons become intoxicated and lose themselves when using their dark power.
A sudden, heavy step sounding as she remembers struggling to hold back her violent urges in the human world.
A shadowy hand reaches out as a voice questions why she bothers to restrain herself. The shadow tempts her to kill since she is the strongest, causing a sudden, heavy splash sounding. A sudden, weary sigh sounding as Bellatrix gasps for air in the water. The princess wonders if she's failing.
Bellatrix fears she is losing her humanity and becoming a monster after 5,000 years in the demon realm.
A sudden, weary sigh sounding as the black-haired girl whispers her desperate wish to escape.
A sudden, radiant hum sounding as the girl's phone activates a magic circle on the bedroom floor.
She calls out for her friend Hewer. Chibi Ewer screams with joy, telling the lady that she has been waiting forever for this moment. Bellatrix questions the impractical dress choice, but Iwer insists it was perfect for her lady's style.
The blue-haired woman suggests that the black-haired girl should return to the human world.
Bellatrix is shocked to hear that a magician has been found who can summon her back. After being called a good girl, Iwer announces she will have the magicians begin the summoning right away. A sudden, fast thump sounding as the princess clutches her chest while her heart races.
Bellatrix resolves to stay in the human world until Keel eventually makes his way to the demon realm.
A bright blue magic circle activates suddenly. The princess stands before the glowing portal. She prepares to step into the light. A sudden, firm grab sounding as Puru reaches out to catch the departing princess.
Bellatrix demands to be released, declaring that she is leaving the demon realm immediately.
The teddy bear-like servant frantically argues that she should at least get dressed before she goes. She admits his point is valid. Chibi Ewer jokes about a bathrobe being sufficient while the red-haired man shouts at her in disbelief.
The blue-haired woman whispers that she is joking while noting how many people are curious about the lady.
Iwer winks and asks for confirmation from the young master.
A sudden sharp gasp sounding as the blonde Keel blushes furiously while hiding his face.
The blonde prince is completely flustered.